Sorry about that, George.
Start all over?
That's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Anybody wish to make any public comments at this time? Not on today's agenda. If you want to just come up and identify yourself, please.
How far up?
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Lucy Cerise, and I just wanted to speak up about the Glacier Ranch acquisition. My husband and I have been ranching there. We've been leasing it for about a dozen years, and we run cattle there, put up hay, irrigate, the whole 9 yards. When I heard from Joyce Glacier that the county was going to purchase it, it filled me with so much hope that it could be preserved. It just is a wonderful piece of property, and it's if that could happen, I just would really think it was the greatest thing that ever happened. It just really is wonderful. And Michael, I understand that it's in Eagle County, and I understand your argument about why are we purchasing land in Eagle County. And it's very valid what you said. I live in Pitkin, but a lot of my coworkers from the ski company live in Eagle or Garfield County, and Pitkin County's done a really wonderful job of preserving open space, but Eagle hasn't, or Garfield, and I just think that if Pitkin County can lead the way in this, that's a good step forward. My only reservation is that the Glacier acquisition would become a parking lot for the Salt and Stall property, and kind of open up the crown like a sacrifice area, and I would like to see, just a limit to kind of that trail portal thing. But I understand there's got to be a give and take.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah.
Anybody else wishing to make a public comment that's not on today's agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it all back to commissioner comments. Rob and then Steve.
I have a comment about an event that took place last weekend. I mentioned it last week, but I just want to give a little follow-up on it. The Aspen Rotary Club Ducky Derby. We had a very huge goal this year of both fundraising through our sponsorship and duck sales of $300,000. And as of our count right now, even though there's still some counting going on because there were a lot of ducks in the race, we're at $289,525. Just an unbelievable fundraiser. A lot of that came in from some pretty big donors to cover the expenses of the race. And I'd just like to mention a thanks to the Viceroy of Snowmass, Nori Collection, Garfield and Hecht, the Sotheby's of Aspen, the Aspen Valley Hospital, and Mountain Chalet as our main donors for that event. The event has absolutely no overhead. It's completely done by volunteers from the Rotary Club of Aspen. The sponsors pay for all of the tents and stuff that you see out there, so all of that is covered. The majority of this money goes to local youth groups and scholarships and exchange programs that Rotary puts on throughout the year. We send students to countries both in the East and in the West and in Europe and all over the place. So we really had a very successful Ducky Derby this year, and I'd like to congratulate Joe Carlson of Delta for having the winning duck this year. Walked away with $10,000, didn't win the $1 million duck this year, but maybe next year, get your ducks for next year, and maybe someone will win the $1 million duck. So it was a fabulous event.
Great, thank you. Steve?
I'd like to put in a plug for the Harold Whitcomb Memorial Cup. It's an annual fundraising golf tournament at the Aspen Golf Course, and the date for this year's tournament is Tuesday, August 27th. It's 8:30 sign-in, 9:30 shotgun start. The entry deadline is August 22nd at 4 o'clock. And entry fee is $85. It includes green fees, cart balls, golf balls, lunch, and a guaranteed good time. So if you are a golfer or a flogger like I am and are interested in going out and hitting a golf ball around for a good cause, all the proceeds go to for senior center programs. Thank you.
Steve? Other commissioner comments? Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. What a beautiful day we're having out there today after all this rain. I just would like to mention that the Pickens County Democratic Party is having Wendy Davis in town for a speaker series tonight, and I cannot attend that, but I would like to wish them well for the event, and particularly to give a shout out to Wendy Davis because she has stood for women's reproductive rights in a hostile environment in Texas, and I think that that is something that has always been stood firm by in Colorado and by our community. So I just would like to wish them well and welcome her to town. And I'd also like to mention that the adaptation to climate change and mountains and coastal areas, a transatlantic dialogue, is also happening this week in Aspen. I was fortunate to be able to participate in the first half of that exchange in Hamburg, Germany in April. And they just had their welcoming last night, sponsored by the local Aspen Global Climate Institute, Duke University, Ecologic, and the German Climate Service Center of Germany. And they're really bringing together a very diverse group of people from all different disciplines to talk about how to adapt to the changes that are already coming from the atmospheric changes we have made as a society, and how to communicate the science better to the layperson and the public. And so I do believe they're having a public lecture at ACES on Thursday evening as part of the Walter Orr Roberts public lecture series, and I think that I could be wrong, but I believe it starts at 6, so they're suggesting being in there at 5:30 to get a seat. And I just want to say how exciting that is and interesting at a time when Colorado is in drought and where there are wildfires burning literally all around us, and how fortunate we've been in this valley to be getting those monsoon rains in the afternoon. But that does not make us invulnerable, and I think we had a few close calls even yesterday. So everyone be diligent, and we'll all try to see what we can do to adapt. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Rachel, it does start at 6 o'clock at ACES on Thursday night. And that reminds me of the big event this week is actually, our day is happening Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in Aspen. And there are local discount tickets for the whole thing available, or passes. Some of the events are free, but it's very well worth attending. And you learn an awful lot about global climate change issues at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michael, anything? The mornings are very crisp. I was out early this morning on my bike, but I was on an uphill ride, so that was good. But it's always, you always know that summer is coming to an end when we receive our information on ski company passes. When the ski company announces their season passes, then you know summer is coming to a close, but not yet. And there's a lot of activities going on, as has been mentioned. This is the final weekend of the music festival. Aspen Theater in the Park. Theater in the Park has productions going on. Right next door in the Rio Grande Plaza for the next 3 weekends, it's going to be Shakespeare in the Park, and they're going to be doing the classic Romeo and Juliet. And there's certainly lots of sporting events. As hopefully all you know, the pro cycling race will be in town starting on Monday. In fact, you'll see bikers around town in similar shirts. They're team members that are in town now training and riding the course. So a lot going on. Summer is still in full swing, even though we've received information on our ski passes. So enjoy the rest of the summer. Okay, so with that, we're going to go on to our consent action items. These are all first readings set for public hearing on August 28th. We have discussed most of these in work sessions, so I'll read through these, and anybody who wishes to pull one for further information, just let me know and we'll pull those. Otherwise, we'll look for a motion to approve them. First is a resolution authorizing the 2013 Renewable Energy Mitigation Program, known as REP, funding including the 2013 Green Key Grants and the 2013-2014 programs.
I'd like to pull that.
Okay. Next is a resolution authorizing the Energy Smart Program funding for 2013 to 2015.
I'm recusing myself from 2 and 3, which are kind of connected, so we should pull those separately.
Okay. Next is a resolution adopting changes in the FM radio allocations on the Pickens County translator system. Next is a resolution to repeal resolution number 35-2012. It's a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County adopting the governance policy 2.17 FM radio allotments on Pickens County's translator system and policy 2.18 TV allotments on Pickens County's translator system.
If we could pull that.
Okay. Next is a resolution approving a contract with the Colorado Department of Transportation assigning maintenance responsibilities for State Highway 82, the Aspen Airport Business Center pedestrian underpass.
I'd like some additional information on that one.
Okay. And last is a resolution accepting grant offers for the Federal Aviation Administration and the Colorado Division of Aeronautics and authorization to spend the funds.
Could we? I'd like to hear from the staff on that, actually.
Okay, so it looks like the only one we don't really need to pull is a resolution adopting changes in the FM radio allocations on the Pickens County translator system.
I would move to approve that item.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Public.
Set for public hearing.
It's set for public hearing.
Sorry.
That's okay. All right, so let's just work through these. We'll have Mona Newton is here with Cora and Jason Huber and Cindy Hubin. And we'll have some questions on the resolution authorizing 2013 Renewable Energy Mitigation Program funding, including the Green Key grants and programs. And I guess we'll follow up with that as long as we've got you in front of us with the Energy Smart Program funding.
Sure.
Michael?
I really have just a statement to make about this. I mean, my dilemma with this grant, and it's been an outstanding dilemma for years actually, is that it's imperfect. It's imperfect because, well, first of all, because in this particular resolution, all these items are bundled. And so we have the Green Key, we have the new programs, let's see, well, they're all bundled together. I mean, imagine a beauty contest that you decide to sponsor. And then imagine you enter that beauty contest, that same beauty contest that you're sponsoring. And then imagine you judge yourself to receive first prize. That's essentially what's going on here. And I've asked, I mean, the city of Aspen is getting $250,000. They contributed to the fund, they judged the fund, and they judged themselves a winner in that fund. I just think that it's not the way I would run a process, a governmental process. I guess it's fine if you want to run your beauty contest that way, but it doesn't work for government. It doesn't mean that I'm not in favor of better energy use. But this process that is used here is imperfect. And I think one of the solutions for me is to when you levy these fees, to reserve those fees either to Pickens County or to Aspen, or at least a good portion of those, and exempt yourself from any kind of judging, any kind of grant making, and use those funds as you feel are proper in your own energy use of your governmental agency. There are recipients in here who are deserving, I think, but the process is not good. There's other recipients here who are entering, judging, and winning all in the same breath, and I just don't think it's a good way to run government and run this process. I think the program itself, the rent funds derive from fees charged to people who don't mitigate on their property for energy use. That was a good idea. It was, but all it's created is a river of money. It hasn't changed people's behavior. They're still putting in heated driveways. They're still putting in heated pools. They're still putting in hot tubs, and we're still charging them a fee. And we really need to do something better than that. And I think by changing our energy code, we could do that. I mean, if heated pools aren't what we want in Pickens County, let's eliminate heated pools. Let's not create a fee structure that allows you to have a heated pool, and then somehow that money ends up in a strange process that I just described in your own pockets. So I'm going to vote against this, but I wanted to make sure that people knew exactly why I was against it and why it needs improvement. So.
Thank you, Michael. It's what's that quote? Perfection is the enemy of the good, and it's not a perfect process, but we continue to perfect it, actually. And actually, the process for the Green Key grant should be noted that there is an independent citizen committee that actually reviews all the grants, and they've got technical advisors on that committee as well as community members. And they go through those grants with a scoring system similar to what our community grants committee has for the healthy community funds. And it's a way to ensure that the goals of the Green Key grant program are being met in terms of reducing energy use. So, and then that committee makes recommendations to the core board, who then has a second look at those grants and recommendations, and they have the opportunity to adjust and make changes. And then finally in that process, it comes before the Board of County Commissioners and the City of Aspen. So it's a fairly thorough process. It may not be perfect, but I think it allows for a lot of discussion and to ensure that the program is meeting its goal. In terms of how those rent dollars get used, it should be noted that since the year 2000, when the rent program was first instituted, the monies that have been collected through the building departments of the City of Aspen and the county, we have the core board and has reinvested over $10 million into the community for residential projects, for nonprofit projects, and for governmental projects. So it's been a tremendous benefit to help companies, businesses, individuals to help reduce their energy use. And so it is a successful program. It doesn't mean it's perfect, and we continue to look at ways to improve it. But I think it has proven itself very worthy and continues to with some of the new programs that we're instituting. One for low and medium income households that make a little too much to meet the state's weatherization program. They could take advantage of funding to help improve their energy efficiency. Another is a new program to look at large buildings to help them find ways to, again, reduce their energy use and carbon footprint. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is how we as a community can reduce our carbon footprint. And it should be noted that the RENT program is really the only program in the country, in the nation, that is a carbon tax program. And our legislators have been talking about this for years without any success. And here we have a successful model that we could show the rest of our country that there are opportunities and ways to encourage people to not only use additional energy that they may not be necessary, but to then find a mechanism, a tax, to utilize those dollars in a beneficial way. So I'm going to support that. Bob, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it was really just, I guess, kind of a question for Michael in terms of what he's trying to accomplish here, because I suppose we could choose to pull items 3, 4, and 5 and write a separate resolution and vote on it separately for those items, which are City of Aspen items. And because I think you mentioned that that's your contention here, or we can change this system down the road.
Those items are not just City of Aspen items. You mean a Green Key grant?
The Green Key grant, yeah. And because it seems like he feels that he doesn't want to vote for the rest of them because he doesn't want to vote for those.
Well, I mean, that's a fundamental problem. I mean,
we can pull it.
But there are other problems within the thing, so I don't think we'd solve it by completely solve it. I just think that it's flawed, that's all. And George mentioned the citizen group. That citizen group wouldn't be there unless I insisted on it being there. And so that's an improvement. But I don't think we still are judging and entering our own beauty contest here. So I don't think it's the end of the world if you guys vote for this, but it's hard for me to year after year after year to point out these flaws and not make much progress. And also, fundamentally, that it's, this addiction to this river of money that this program is generating. Somehow we have to do better than that. We have to do better than raising money by allowing people to put in heated pools. We have to do better than that. And I think that the thought was in 2000 was that if we put a strong fee on this process, it would discourage the development of heated driveways, of spas, of outdoor spas, of heated pools. And it hasn't done, as far as I know, anything. It just, there's the income level around here that allows people just to pay the fee. It's agreeable to them. So there's some fundamental problems, and then there's some problems I've just mentioned here. City of Aspen entering, judging, and winning is a problem. But we do the same thing. We've done the same thing in the past, Pitt County. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on the City of Aspen. I'm just saying it's a process that doesn't conform to my idea of a fair and transparent governmental transaction. That's all I'm saying.
Let's see.
I'm moving to a different topic.
Okay, we'll wait here. Rachel, then Steve.
Yeah, thank you. I can understand you having a different point of view, Michael, but I don't think that is the brush in which I would paint this item or this program. And I think you've now ascribing goals that were not part of the original. It is to offset energy use and to encourage design that does reduce energy consumption. And I think there has been vast improvements in design. There may still be overuse beyond what I would consider normal and are in a smaller household or in a lower income household. But it is not designed as a program to eliminate outdoor heated pools. And I don't think that this board or other boards would ever decide to eliminate outdoor heated pools in the name of stopping climate change. I think that's a dam that would not hold, and I think that it would start to smack of a bias against wealthier residents and their design processes. And so that's just a throwaway comment to my mind. I've heard you repeatedly talk about the value of a transactional marketplace when it comes to TDRs and people being allowed to build bigger homes because they're sterilizing homes over here. And this is part of a transactional marketplace as well, where people are able to suit the style and lifestyle needs that they would like to build into their residences, but at the same time mitigate that energy impact. I was there when we formed CORE, and it was never to stop people from doing things like a heated driveway. It was to mitigate the impact and minimize perhaps the size of that. But we had to always balance that with the energy use of sending a snowplow driver up from basalt in their car every day to plow the driveway with a carbon-burning gasoline vehicle, because the driveway was still going to be plowed or cleared one way or the other, and it probably wasn't going to be the homeowner going out and shoveling the snow. I really take offense at the comment about judging and entering your own beauty contest. That could just as well be leveled against the county, this board, yourselves, ourselves, in approving the airport master plan. We hired the consultants, we gave them input, we took public comment, we refined the proposals, and we passed the plan. It's a type of thing that happens all the time. And if we get down to the details, there are 2 members of a 9-panel board on the city, from the city of Aspen. That's not a majority. That doesn't give them an ability to rubber stamp their own projects, just as we only have 2 out of 9 seats on this board, which includes Basalt, which includes Carbondale, which includes Snowmass Village, which includes past citizen group Energy 2000. And I think that it includes Holy Cross Electric. I think these are groups that offer a great deal of scrutiny and assistance to the goal of reducing energy use. So I am happy to move this forward. I appreciate the regional approach, and I think the concept of withholding a certain amount of funds for ourselves to use however we saw fit without any of this outside technical expertise or other communities weighing in, that would eliminate transparency. That would eliminate the competitive nature of these grants. And so I'm very happy with the work that the citizens have done, the CORE board has done, and I'd like to move this forward.
Steve?
A bigger concern to me than the way the awards are given is the fact that in looking over the list of unspent money from the past 10 years or so, which is actually on the next item 2 of our agenda, there are a lot of money that was not spent by Aspen and Pitkin County and RAFTA, and I don't know why the money was not spent at the time it was awarded, but RAFTA did not spend $90,000 that was awarded them. Burlingame Housing in 2007 did not spend $100,000. Pitkin County in 2008 did not spend $68,000. Nor in 2010, $141,000. The city of Aspen in 2009 did not spend $184,000 that was awarded to them. I don't know the reasons why the money that was awarded was not spent, but I wonder how much good could have come if that money had been spent on really good projects at those times to save energy or to produce renewable energy. And so that would be more of a concern to me, that perhaps the governmental agencies are applying for money and then maybe they're not vetting out their project well enough ahead of time, or maybe they're not spending the money wisely enough, or some other reason why they were awarded the money and didn't spend it. Fortunately, in this case, the money that they did not spend is now going to be put to a really good use for the Energy Smart program, but to me,
Let's talk about this in the next
bigger
topic,
concern.
because I'm recusing myself from that issue. So let's not talk about item 2 when we're supposed to be
Okay.
talking about item 1.
Well, I just wanted to make the point that the governmental agencies got the money and didn't spend it for whatever reason.
We can answer that question for you, Stephen, for the public. If there's no other questions or comments on this first item,
I have another, this has nothing to do with what we were talking about. I had brought up the WeCycle application in this last time, and my two premier questions were, is there a nature of kind of double dipping going on here? First, I want to say I'm in support of WeCycle. I would bring this up with any organization that had this sort of dynamic coming before us in a grant. It has nothing to do with the WeCycle program itself. My recollection of the CMAQ money that went to WeCycle from the county was that it was directly supposed to be to support the offsetting of air mitigation, including carbon air mitigation, and that included the proposal of the solar aspect, and that those dollars would go directly towards the kiosks and not the bikes, because the bikes were being made outside of the country, I think Canada, I believe, and the money had to be spent on American-made stuff. So that was the one question: how is this not a double dipping from the CMAQ money? The second question is, what's the policy and procedure of a project that happens retrospectively? What's to stop someone from something 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago saying, well, I saved carbon footprint money and now I want to apply for a grant, but we've already spent it on this stuff. My interpretation of what would make this program great is, and I think it is great, is that it pushes people over the edge to better their programs, not basically reimbursing them for an expenditure that's already happened. Getting people to do the upgrades or to spend the extra money on something that may not have a financial return to them, but does have a financial offset to carbon. So those are the two questions. How is this not a double dipping? And what is the policy on projects retrospectively?
Okay.
No, Jason, you want to respond? And then we also have Mirta in the back that could help out if needed as well.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, I hope you all received a letter that we requested and received from WeCycle to address those exact concerns.
We did not receive that in our packet.
I know it wasn't in the packet. I think it was provided supplementally after the packet went out, so I apologize if you didn't get that. The quick turnaround from our last meeting to packet deadline precluded us from including that. We did provide that in the interim, and there's a pretty clear accounting in terms of where the CMAQ money was dedicated and allocated from, both contributions raised with local match provided by the city of Aspen, Picken County, and a contribution from WeCycle as well. And so I think in terms of the double dip question, as you mentioned, there is a stipulation regarding Made in America, I think, for the components of the project that you do buy with the CMAQ funds. And that's pretty clearly laid out in terms of the docks that the bikes go into, the plates that lie under them, and the kiosks for payment. And it's laid out and represented that at the time that they received those funds and actually, in fact, designed those components, the solar panels and the battery systems were an add-on component in order to bring the entire program of WeCycle into more consistency in terms of how those stations are powered and the level of sustainability and benefits towards carbon overall. And so the representation is that the $19,000 that's being requested towards the solar collectors and battery components were not contemplated or funded in the original project budget. They're not covered at all by the CMAQ money or the local match dollars that were raised. WeCycle went out on a limb to some degree to go above and beyond and make that commitment to make those stations carbon-free, and took the risk on of going out and committing to those collectors and the batteries. They made an agreement with the vendor that that bill would not be due and payable until the end of September of this year, with the hope that they would be able to secure either additional fundraising privately in the community or through grants such as the one that's being requested here. As far as the question about retroactive funding towards projects, again, the core board has adopted a policy that basically says, we are using these funds, we want to use these funds. The most appropriate use of these funds is to provide that incentive for projects to go above and beyond and not to fund things retroactively. And they stand pretty firm by that, and that's an acknowledged and adopted policy of the board. And we've invoked that on a couple projects in the last couple of years, specifically the Wheeler Opera House, a renovation that went on a year prior and was fully paid for and came in for a request to retroactively offset some of those costs. That was declined in terms of funding for last year. This one, and again, it's the level of transparency you get with the Citizens Grant Review Committee, the core board, and then the 2 reviews at the city and county, essentially recognizing the situation for this project. There was a timeline. They went out, they made the commitment to do this. It's not so far in arrears that we would assume that that's all been done and paid for, recognizing that there is still a payable amount due on that component. I think the judgment of those review bodies indicated that this was a reasonable expense and an appropriate expense for this year's grant cycle. So,
Are the solar panels refundable?
I don't think so. I think the point is that would just put the burden on further fundraising.
Yeah, to continue to raise the money.
So the transaction has already happened.
Transactions happen. We've got the panels.
Even though the billable is until September, the transaction has already happened.
Well, and something like this is always repossessable, if you will, because it's not hooked to a building, so they could repossess them, and then I think then it would, and Mirta could answer this question, then they would be incumbent to find some kind of power, because they do need some electricity for the to power the stations.
When were the grant applications submitted?
May 1st. That was our deadline.
So that's kind of before there was delivery of these pieces, before there was installation, and the application had been made. I wouldn't consider that retroactive.
And I guess one thing, just moving forward with a potential review of the grant process, as Michael's indicated before, is to maybe have a rolling grant process, because their trigger points were probably well before May 1st to get WeCycle built and shipped and in our community. I don't remember exactly when it went online, but the grant cycle is such that they have to make those decisions before applying for the grant. I mean, theoretically, I would say if anybody's made the decision to purchase something before a grant, well, it's a grant retrospectively, but if they could apply for the grant concurrently with the decision-making process, and then it be considered that the grant money, they may be moving forward with it anyway, but the grant money it's not something that's retrospective,
Right.
If somebody has a project that they want to do right now, how do they, if it's next May is the grant process, what do they do? So, I mean, we don't need to answer that question now. I'm okay with the WeCycle thing. Like I said, it really has nothing to do with WeCycle. It has to do more with understanding the rent program and how dollars get allocated. The only thing that I would slightly disagree with is I think that it was represented to us that they were going to have solar, so that we were mitigating we're already mitigating that air quality through car travels and energy use and those sorts of things. Because I think the very first representation to us was that they're solar panel things. So, but I'm all right, and I'm in favor of this resolution as it is. But I think it needs more thought as the rent program moving forward as to what's considered as a retroactive or a double dipping, because I think they've represented to two different grants. This is the energy they're saving, and they're taking full benefit for that energy saving.
Okay, if that's...
I would make a motion, if you're ready even for further discussion. I move to approve the resolution authorizing the 2013 Renewable Energy Mitigation Program REMP funding, including the 2013 Green Key grants and the 2013/2014 programs.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Good, thank you. Let's see.
I'm recusing myself
Okay.
from the Energy Smart program.
So are there any questions on the resolution authorizing the Energy Smart program funding for 2013 to 2015? Michael?
At our work session, I asked for this list of where these funds were coming from, because I think it would, Steve essentially posed the question also, it would, I think, help us to judge what's flawed with the grant system. This is a substantial amount of money, virtually $1 million, that wasn't used for some reason.
Right.
And it covers huge breadth of amounts of money and of recipients. And you'd think that this amount of money would be used by someone. And actually, there's the $50,000 in here, I'm happy to see actually, of the coal mine methane, which was one of the first questions I asked, was why is Pickens County mitigating methane in Utah? I mean, another fundamental problem I think that needs to be examined with this program is that the mitigations can occur globally. Because anytime you mitigate anywhere, you're doing the world a favor. But the funds for it are raised locally. And there's a conflict there, it seems to me. You might as well just go to China and say, here's $1 million, would you please mitigate something? And so that's the problem, but there wasn't, I appreciate the list. And actually, I have had a lot of criticisms. I appreciate the presentation of the last memo because it gave more facts and figures than we've ever had before. And I appreciate the effort on this particular memo at doing something useful with money that wasn't claimed. And particularly, we're not talking about, in essence, for me at least, the grants to people who could use the money rather than large taxable entities. So this is a better direction that we're going. But I didn't learn very much from not knowing why those grants weren't accepted, why they weren't spent, and the process of sort of reclaiming them. And I think what it says is, look at your grant process very closely. This is essentially what I'm saying also.
Yeah.
There's $1 million worth of let's look back. That's all.
And I think,
Yeah, I'll have you answer that in a moment, but I don't agree with Michael. I don't think it's a flawed grant system. The Corps Board directed staff a year ago to, when we saw the accounting, to revisit and do some better accounting on dollars that had been allocated for grants and had never really gone through. And the Corps staff did an exceptional job in terms of going back several years to determine which of these organizations were granted dollars. They actually never received those dollars because those dollars get received once receipts come in. But it was an accounting error, not an error, but it was accounting system that was not being followed up as best as it could be. And I think the core board with staff has resolved that problem as we're moving forward. But no, now that you've explained a little more in depth in terms of how that process went and if those dollars were actually, where those dollars now could be utilized.
Sure. So we could go through each one or send you a follow-up information as to why they didn't spend. I mean, some of them are small amounts, and they're basically, recipients may have requested more money than they actually needed, and because we only reimburse on what is actually spent, that sometimes there's money left in the pool. So, there might actually have been a project that was completed. They just didn't need all of the funding. There's various reasons why some of the projects didn't go forward, and we've confirmed with everybody that they didn't complete the project, they didn't have an intention to actually complete the project, and if they had, we collected any receipts from them that they would have done and we paid out. But going forward, again, with the core board and staff, we have decided how we're going to proceed with our grants and have a much more rigorous process. I mean, managing grants is challenging. I mean, you all have been in that position where you have done that, and as I came from the governor's energy office, so I have a little bit of bureaucrat built into me, and so I think that's part of it. We now have a more rigorous process in that we have a 2-year contract for our grant recipients, and we ask for, they have to, if they haven't completed their project at the end of 2 years, they have to request an extension, and that will be approved by the board, by the core board, so we'll know exactly the status of projects, and we're working with them to make sure that they're acknowledging the fund more visibly so that people in the community know where the funds are coming for some of these projects. And so I believe that we really have we had a good process, and now we've just made it even better, and we're making it better, and we'll continue to improve upon that. I think over the next year, we appreciate all of the input and the comments, and we're happy to take them and make it better, because we feel really beholden to the community and to mitigate use the money wisely and mitigate as best as we can. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is to mitigate carbon, and so we feel really beholden to making sure that it happens and responsible. So that's why we have decided that's why we felt like it was important to look at the projects and see what was not going to go forward, and then devise a plan going to how we could utilize that money. And Energy Smart has been very successful in terms of implementation, and we felt like this was a good opportunity to use that money to go forward and continue the Energy Smart program and to help support the commercial incentives as well. So.
Okay, thanks, Mona. Rachel?
Yeah, just to really go with Steve's question in some way, I do think it'd be valuable to get a short accounting of these items, and some, the $410, this or that, obviously it's a 1 or 2 liner, but I can look through the list and see things that I know we had intended to make Keeter Grove more energy efficient if Picken County had invested in that housing project, but it never got the rest of the components. So some of these are projects where the rest of the dollars didn't come through. Or when we get closer to the end at the 2010 Picken County, I think I've just confirmed with John, it had more to do with us not moving forward with the remodel of this building and all the components that we had hoped to, because we slowed it down to take a look at our real future needs. So the non-expenditure is kind of similar in some ways to the rollover of projects that we have in our capital maintenance plan. I am personally very thankful for the new director and the leadership of CORE and the CORE board in really pulling this forward and putting it out on the table and saying, look, this is where this source of revenue is, and these are unused from previous projects that we have tracked diligently down to the penny to see, did you ask for more than you ever needed, and that's why you never came back for that, and the project's now closed out, or the project was canceled, or whatever the case may be. I think that this is large leaps forward for the program, and I think that's good. But I fully appreciate your concept and your diligence of saying, let's get the money out the door to projects that will be beneficial and fully and accountably tracked. And I think that that is clearly the direction we're moving in. I think it's just, for me, worth noting that, when you got to that fall of November '08 and the economy started crashing, an awful lot of things got put on hold or sidetracked, or grants were no longer available. And within Pickens County ourselves, I know we put off a lot of projects for future years and just rolled them over. So I think it's a great question, and I think that the point's been well made with the organization about how we need to see them utilized going forward.
Steve?
Thank you for the explanation, Rachel, on some of that. And I'm sure, we don't need to go through the whole list by any means, but it raised the question in my mind when I saw $500,000 that was granted and not spent by governmental agencies. I'm really glad that the money now is being put into the Energy Smart program, because that will benefit really hundreds of homeowners and small businesses and able to do upgrade projects on their buildings, and that's just awesome. There will be a huge amount of benefit gained from the nearly $1 million, and I do wonder what happened, and I think I asked this before. I was curious about what happened to the $1 million while it was sitting there not being spent. I don't think it was in an interest-bearing account or invested in anything. And really, the best place to invest it is in renewable energy projects and energy efficiency projects, because they have pretty high rate of return on those. But we had all that money sitting there not going out the door, like you said, Rachel, and that's unfortunate. But we are putting it to good use now, so that's good.
George, would you accept the motion?
Yes.
Have further discussions needed? I would make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the Energy Smart program funding for 2013-2015.
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. And lastly, if there's a need for any additional information, as long as we have staff up here, resolution authorizing a memorandum of understanding between Eagle, Gunnison, and Pickens counties to allow Lake County residents access to the Energy Smart revolving loan program. Anybody have any questions?
I would make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
George Robb is on his way back.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Okay, next, we're going to have some questions on the resolution to repeal resolution number 35-2012, a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County adopting governance policy, 2.17 FM radio allotments of Pickens County's translator system, and policy 2.18 TV allotments on Pickens County's translator system. Phyllis's name is on here, but she's at a conference, so Jody Smith is here, as well as one of our translator board, or several of them members.
Thank you. I'm Jody Smith. I'm the facilities manager. I'd like to introduce John Emmerich, who is our chairperson for the Translator Advisory Board. We also have Corby Anderson, who is a board member for the Translator Advisory Board. And then John Banks is our technical engineer for Pickens County to help us, guide us on the system.
Good. Well, thank you, board members, for coming and for all your time and work on all of our behalfs. So who asked to pull this?
Steve?
Any questions?
I didn't actually have a question, but I know where John Emmerich lives, and I know that he came a long way to get here. I wanted to get him up here because I just wanted to say that I think the Translator Advisory Board has done an awesome job of analyzing all these different applications that were given to you from the different radio stations. And I went, as you remember, I went to your one meeting there in Elgeville, when all the representatives were representing their cases. And you had a daunting task in front of you to analyze that and figure out the engineering of it and where there's space available and what radio stations would be appropriate for the different locations. So I just wanted to commend the Translator Advisory Board and the staff for
Steve,
going through that process and sticking it out, because I think you came up with a good result on the whole process.
I said I have a meeting tonight, so I'll pass your comment on, and I'm sure that they'll all appreciate very much your comment. Thank you.
Any other questions? It should be noted that I continually get feedback on not only the great service that the Translator Board is providing, but also staff, John Banks specifically. I heard that from people way up in Meredith and Thomasville the other day. So thank you for all the work that you do. I know John responds very quickly when I call, and it's appreciated.
I would make a motion to approve the resolution to repeal Resolution Number 35, 2012, a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County adopting governance policy 2.17 FM radio allotments on Pickens County's translator system and policy 2.18/TV allotments on Pickens County translator system.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you for your comments, Steve. Certainly shared.
Okay, we're still on our consent action items, first readings, and the next that we ask to have closed is a resolution approving the contract for the Colorado Department of Transportation assigning maintenance responsibilities for State Highway 82, the airport pedestrian underpass. And I think Brian Pettit is here to answer any questions. Who asked to pull that?
I did.
Rob, okay.
Yeah, Brian, I was wondering if you can give a brief overview on the financials behind this, the $25,000 basically budget that we're contracting with. It's with CDOT to maintain the services of this underpass and how that works out. What is that? How do those expenses break down, and more information about what this means?
Okay. Well, the financial aspects of maintaining the snowmelt system really is separate from this contract. The contract that you're agreeing to today is really between CDOT and the county, which delineates the maintenance responsibilities of the pedestrian underpass. Whether it was snowmelt or shoveling snow, CDOT doesn't care. They just want the county to agree to take care of maintenance in that area. The $25,000 you're referring to was derived from the square footage of snowmelt that's associated with the pedestrian crossing. All of the ramps, the plaza, and about 15 feet into the tunnel is snow melted. So we'll never have to shovel that or maintain it physically. The snow and ice will melt, as a matter of fact, by that snow melt system. So the contract, again, the contract with CDOT doesn't refer to that money. I thought it was just an opportunity for the board to understand there are costs associated with this maintenance.
And these are costs that have been in our budget already when we made this decision, or is this an additional cost from the budget that we...
These will be ongoing operating costs. Every time we do a capital project or capital improvement, we anticipate that there's going to be some ongoing costs for maintenance or operations, as well as future capital repairs. And so those are you're going to see those in our 5-year plans moving forward.
So under that line item, ongoing facility or maintenance costs, every time we build something new, that number gets larger on a year-to-year basis.
That is going to get larger on a year-to-year basis. Now, what happens, though, is we've also been in the process of implementing energy savings in a lot of our other facilities. So what you're seeing is decreases in some areas and increases in others. And so the net effect, I don't think we've seen that kind of increase, Rob. in our 5-year plan, but that's because of our efforts to change over lighting and boilers and such in some facilities, and as we implement new infrastructure that we are having to maintain, you're going to see increases, but we've been pretty lucky in being able to net those out in the long run in our overall financial plan. But Brian, I think, is trying to point out that there are ongoing costs associated with just the utilities and maintenance of having this new infrastructure.
This contract in itself basically just states that CDOT is not responsible for it, and they want to make clear that this is our facility, even though it crosses in their right-of-way and whatnot.
Correct. That's correct.
Any other questions for Brian while he's up?
Well, hate to ask, but do we know where we are on schedule?
It's a good question, and hopefully GR will be here for open discussion
Yeah,
today.
we are here for open discussion.
I'll wait till
Great.
then. Thank you.
Steve?
I would move to approve the resolution approving a contract with the Colorado Department of Transportation assigning maintenance responsibilities for the State Highway 82 AABC pedestrian underpass.
Second.
Second, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, last is a resolution accepting grant offers for the Federal Aviation Administration and Colorado Division of Aeronautics and authorization to spend the funds. And Jim Elwood is here to answer any questions. Who actually asked to pull this, Steve?
Yeah, I wanted to just have Jim run through what the grant application is for, just real briefly.
Pleased to do that. Jim Elwood, Airport Director. There really are 3 grants that are being discussed in this resolution. The first one is uses an FAA designation called AIP for Airport Improvement Program -48. That's the grant sequence that we've received. And as I was sitting in the audience, I was recalling that 11 plus years ago I came to work here, we were working on AIP 17. So we've done a few of these over the past few years. AIP 48 is to reimburse the airport fund for some snow removal equipment that we purchased in 2012. We went ahead and purchased that equipment. As you know, we have one of the finest snow removal teams and equipment around. Extremely proud of those folks who operate this equipment, but it does need to be replaced periodically, and that's what's represented in that particular grant. The total for that section is $1.2 million. Of that, the FAA component is just under $1.1 million. So the local share is a difference of about $120,000. So that's one grant. The second grant is AIP 49. That's to do pavement maintenance on the runway and some sections that we did not do in this current year's pavement maintenance program. That actually will show a financial benefit to the airport's 5-year capital plan, because we had looked to pay for that with 100% local funds, or at least majority local funds with some state grants in our previous 5-year projections. So that is a direct benefit to us moving forward. That is expected to be about $939,000 worth of overall project, of which federal would be $844,000, and local airport enterprise funds of about $93,800, thereabouts. We have not budgeted for that particular project in either the 13 budget. We forecasted it in the 14 budget. There is an additional component of that project. We have a piece of concrete that's turned into our aircraft wash area for all the users of the airport. It was the old foundation for the Public Works building back when it was still located on the airport, and as you can imagine, that foundation is 40-some years old now, I think. It's unraveling and throwing off rocks and other things as part of it. It needs to be replaced. So we're looking to design a new wash pad for that area in that grant. We're also looking to design some paved shoulders on our taxiway. And when we did the runway extension a couple years ago, we paved the taxiway shoulders out on the extension. That's not true for the rest of the taxiway or the rest of the airport. They're on the east side. So that's what's in AIP 49. AIP 50, as you may recall, and some of you may recall, we've been fairly fortunate at picking up some grant funds at the end of the year for projects that were important to the airport. AIP 50 is the construction of those taxiway shoulders and the rehab of that building foundation, wash apron area. And we don't have assurances that we'll get those grant dollars. We just kind of want to be in the right place at the right time if funds should become available as the federal year kind of winds itself down. So all of those pieces, plus the potential of a state aeronautics grant, all kind of wrapped into this resolution, asks for the chair of the Board of County Commissioners authorization to sign those grants as they may come, and also to allow staff to execute and apply for and execute a state grant should that occur.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
Michael?
Jim, in determining who's the best snow removal team in the nation, do you enter contests or?
Well, based on the earlier conversation, we enter and then judge ourselves for that.
That's what I thought.
There are some awards that go out nationally, and we've applied periodically, but I guess it's really my opinion that we've done a really strong job, and we measure, just as a recall, we measure how many minutes we're holding up flights for our commercial airline partners. Because we don't have the airfield ready for them to use, and so we take a lot of pride in keeping that down into minutes each season. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well, thanks for your work and thank your crews too. Everybody appreciates it.
Rob?
Given the fact we've got such wonderful equipment and such a great team, are you predicting a better snow year this year?
Yes, I am very optimistic that the return of the afternoon thunder showers is a positive precursor to a very terrific snow season.
Good to hear.
Okay, no other questions?
I would make a motion to approve a resolution accepting the grant offers for the Federal Aviation Administration and the Colorado Division of Aeronautics and authorization to spend the funds.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you, Jim. Okay, we're going to move on to our consent public hearings. These are our second readings. And the first is an ordinance accepting the conveyance of the Nicholas Family Trust Conservation Easement. Paul Holsinger from Open Spaces here.
Thank you, George. I'm going to bring up my name is Paul Holsinger. I'm the Pitkin County Open Space and Trails Land Officer, and this project came to Open Space and Trails through the Community Development Department as part of a rezoning process. The Nichols family is moving forward to develop their property through the county's Conservation Development Program. So in that, they've selected a couple sites to develop on their property and then conserve the rest of the property and protect it in a conservation easement. So what we're looking at is the property is located in the North Fork of the Frying Pan River. So to help everybody out, we're located down here in Aspen. up here, and then this is the road to Rudai coming across, so it's right around here. And property is 312 acres. It has about 2 miles of the North Fork of the Frying Pan River, and it also has a reservoir and a few ponds within the property boundary. It's highly visible from the road that cuts through, and which gives access to a campground, United States Forest Service campground right here. And we've been working with the landowners to come up with a really good conservation easement. Allison Eastley is the family's attorney, and she's been really good to work with and very open and amenable to everything that we've asked for. John Ely has reviewed the conservation easement, and he is okay with it. So now we just would like to record this conservation easement and have it designated an open space and trails property so that we may steward the property as part of our asset portfolio.
All right, questions for Paul? Steve?
Somewhere, and I don't have the exact wording, but it said that we would be approving the conservation in substantially the form it is in. Does that mean that it's still being slightly modified?
Yeah, no, right now I think we're really happy with what it is. We didn't want to come back if there were some minor changes. The thing that happened the first time was we were still working out some language regarding the subdivision. John wanted to beef it up a little bit, so we did that. We also worked on the building envelope language being more precise in what can actually happen within that. But otherwise, it isn't substantially the same. But I'm not anticipating any other changes to this.
And second question has to do with the agreement with the neighbors.
Yeah.
And has that agreement been finalized and signed off by everybody at this point?
I don't know that, but I'm sure Allison knows, and there are representatives of the neighbor group as well. So she could answer questions.
Well, hold on for a second. Other questions for Paul? Okay, this is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to make any public comments, you're welcome to do so at this time. Yes, if you just identify yourself.
Yeah, George, I'm Fred Smith, one of the owners on the property, and perhaps I'll give my moment over to Allison first so she can answer a question that Steve posed, and then I'd like to have a couple of minutes if I might.
You can do either way you like, Fred.
Sure. Allison Eastley for Holland and Hart. We have finalized the agreements and collected signatures, I'm told, by all the members of the neighbor group as of early June.
Yep.
For some time, the respective parties have held on to their respective signature pages, waiting to record all documents relevant to the land use approval, this conservation easement, and those agreements in a particular order such that everything that needs to be prior is prior, and we expect to record them upon receiving approval.
That answer actually takes care of most of what I wanted confirmation on, as Allison has suggested. All 14 of the owners signed the agreements in early June, and as Allison has suggested, the trustees of the trust have also signed. And so we're expecting that upon completion of the documents and final review, correction of a couple of typos, that those documents are going to be recorded in sequence, that our documents will be recorded first and then entered into Section 7, page 9 of the conservation easement where it's indicated, and then that one can be recorded. That being said, we are very pleased that this has come forward. We're very pleased that it's going forward. We think that it's a great tool, this conservation PUD tool, that Pitkin County is going to be able to use in the future. And we appreciate very much the Trust's cooperation and assistance, and also their willingness to place this rather substantial piece of property into a conservation easement.
Thank you. Yes.
I'm Hawk Greenway with the Open Space and Trails Board, and I just wanted to say that to the best of my recollection that the Open Space and Trails Board unanimously accepted the responsibility to steward this property in perpetuity into the future and recommend that you do so as well.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to make any public comments? We'll keep the public comments open for the next agenda item anyway. Back to the board.
Would you accept a motion, George? I would make a motion to approve the ordinance accepting the conveyance of the Nichols Family Trust Conservation Easement.
Second.
Second. I just wanted to commend not only the trust, but all the hard work that went into this. This has been going on. We've been working on this for several months, and all the homeowners that have actually come together. That's not an easy task. Get 14 different homeowners to come to an agreement. But seeing the larger gain and the benefit for all, I want to thank all of you for working so hard in moving this forward. Any further discussion? Steve?
I would ditto what you said, George, having been involved in a very lengthy process over a conservation easement in our family. You've actually done this in record time, I think, compared to how we did.
Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you, Paul. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, next is the ordinance authorizing the acquisition of Glacier Ranch, an intergovernmental agreement providing for joint funding with Eagle County. And Dale Will is going to present this.
Thanks, George, and I brought some friends of Open Space, who I will introduce in a moment. I'm joined by Toby Spunk, who's the director of the Eagle County Open Space Program.
Okay.
These are our county commissioners and county attorney, county manager. Toby and I have been friends for a long time, dating back to when he was the assistant director at Douglas County Open Space, and I was quite pleased that about a little over 2 years ago, we convinced Eagle County to bring him up here to put his expertise to work in the High Mountain area. I also have 3 trustees of the Open Space and Trails Board here. Well, 2 and 1 will be right back. That's great, and I really appreciate that support. Not knowing I'd have a quorum, I didn't notice a meeting, so they are all speaking as individuals today, but as members of a board that has taken action on this item as well. So we had a pretty good discussion at the first reading. I wanted to start with this map, just showing the greater Emma area and how it's laid out. Over here we have the old town of Basalt. We've got the Roaring Fork River running down to Rock Bottom Ranch, Highway 82 and the bypass through Emma, which I still regret, but there it is. It's over there and crosses the river back to its original path and down that way past, among other things, Whole Foods, where they are currently selling beef that's coming off of our open space properties. The town of Basalt has annexed its way down the Highway 82 corridor, and its boundary includes Willits, the area here, which is about a third of a mile from the subject property that I want to discuss, and that's important to bear in mind that we've only got 2 properties in between the current town boundary and the property that we're seeking to protect here, so that always increases the urgency when we see that potential annexation. The Open Space and Trails Board in Pitkin County has been hard at work trying to protect Emma as a whole for many, many years. one of the very first projects that I worked on when I was hired in 1999 was the Emma Open Space. That was a project that purchased 70 acres outright and did it with assistance from the Eagle County General Fund, believe it or not, as well as Pitkin County and have to think about, we had transaction help from the Trust for Public Land. Forgive me if I've forgotten any partners at this point. But from there, that set the stage for a much bigger landscape effort. We moved on to acquiring a conservation easement on the Grange Ranch, one of the original family ranches of this group of Italians from the Aosta Valley, and that was a partnership with Eagle County. The county line runs right through the middle of Emma, where we put together a consortium really with Eagle, the town of Basalt, Pitkin County, and GOCO. Kind of to complete the puzzle pieces on that side, we more recently acquired the Grace Shehai property and now have programming there that includes a very successful community garden as well as a kids' bicycle pump track that is being designed to go in an area that was fairly well impacted by some of the prior uses. Coming down valley then, we were successful in conserving the old Fender Ranch, another ranch that had been owned until very recently by a ranching family that goes back several decades. It's now owned by Tom Clark, who also started out with land of his own. It's all under conservation easements, and Tom Clark has written a letter in support of the project that we're looking at today. Pitkin County jumped up and purchased the bracket parcel, which was a piece of ground that was going to get developed high up on the crown. There was a lot of joking around at the time that the lights from the house on the bracket parcel would have been visible from Hillary Smith's house, and that helped get the deal done, although I don't think that's actually true. We have the Parker property that is under a conservation easement and a trail easement that is the host of Nancy's Path. There's been considerable discussion there. Just crossing the Eagle County line, Eagle County secured a conservation easement on Emma Farms, and that's the property that Lucy Cerise has the custodianship of and has been ranching. As she mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, that was a conservation easement that came out of a development process not unlike the one that Paul Holsinger just described. Immediately adjacent to the Emma Farms property is what we now call our Red Ridge Ranch open space. It was purchased from Salty Saltonstall early this year. It was once part of the larger Glacier family farm down in Emma, and we were quite happy to acquire that. Just some other properties of note, and then I'll zero in on what we're really here to talk about. This is Crown Mountain Park, that is the home of recreational facilities. It was acquired through the aid of Pitkin County in a land exchange that John Ely participated in, whereby some of our backcountry mining claims were exchanged to the Forest Service for their old tree farm. And then finally, down at the end of this corridor, we have ACES with Rock Bottom Ranch. They've also submitted a letter supporting this purchase. It didn't make it into your packet, but we received that today, and it's going into a GOCO grant request that is going out in the FedEx at 4 o'clock today, and that's why Paul Holsinger has run back upstairs to finish polishing up that GOCO grant. So you can see we've been working our way around various partners and entities to protect what's really a very special part of our valley. I kind of think of it as the breadbasket of the Roaring Fork Valley. Some of the most productive farms that we had back in the heyday of food production here were located in this area. The only other thing that rivals it in terms of agricultural productivity are some of the lands immediately surrounding Carbondale. There was a time when the potatoes grown in this valley were larger in quantity than those grown by the state of Idaho, and that period continued up through the 1930s. There were potatoes in high quantity production here until the early 1960s, when the changing market and so on led to the end of that era. But the resource is still here. So let me look at the property that we talk about, if I can navigate the machine here. Always dangerous to let me operate a computer. So zeroing into the middle of the landscape that we were just looking at, this is the Red Ridge Ranch open space. Again, that was once a part of the Glacier Farms. This is Emma Farms. It was previously owned by Betty Cerise, who I think was a cousin of a Glacier and was your father-in-law?
Correct.
Correct. And right in the middle of these two properties lies the remnant kind of parent parcel of the Glacier Farm, as I think of it. It's 137 acres. It has the original homestead buildings on it. Toby's been looking over the title work, and we're seeing title transfers among glaciers that go back into the late part of the 1800s. So it's a rare thing. It's something that's been in this family's ownership for over 100 years, and really is a time capsule of a period dating back to when the original Aosta and immigrants came to this valley. It is of particular interest to the Pitkin County Open Space Board, and I'm sure they'll have more to say about this, but because it hits strongly on all four of our basic criteria that we look for in acquiring open spaces, which are it has extremely high agricultural value, it is extremely important scenic land from this corridor, Highway 82, this one, Hookspur Road, and this one, the Rio Grande Trail, as well as many parts in the mid-valley. You can see the property from Pitkin County as you crest the hill over at the Emma Town site, and you can see it from the heights all the way around it. Third, it is important habitat combined with the Red Ridge Ranch open space. If we acquire this property, we'll have an open space that reaches from the middle of the Roaring Fork River up to about 8,000 feet on the Crown, and the balance of the Crown, some 9,000 acres, is in the BLM's ownership. About two-thirds of the Crown are in Pitkin County, and the balance in Eagle and Garfield counties. And so from a habitat point of view, you've got connectivity all the way from the river into this huge area of public land. And then finally, from a recreational values are here as well, although perhaps not to the extent that we saw them in the Salt and Stall purchase. But as you see, this property does have about 500 feet of river frontage on the Roaring Fork River. There's currently no access to the Roaring Fork River between the Hookspur Bridge and Rock Bottom Ranch on this side. So in acquiring this, we'll be able to evaluate potential access to the river depending on what sort of natural resources and habitat we find there as well. But in addition, we of course have this trail now through the Red Ridge Ranch open space, and by acquiring this adjacent property, we have the flexibility to look at a perimeter trail for the conjunctive use of both Nordic and equestrian uses side by side with the ongoing agricultural use. Again, that type of thing would be subject to a management planning process. Certainly not something we're committed to, but owning the property would give us the ability to look at that. So on all four of our criteria, agriculture, scenery, habitat, and recreation, this score is very high, and this was unanimously recommended to you by your own Pitkin County Open Space and Trails Board of Trustees. And again, I think we'll hear more from three of those people in a moment if they'd like to talk. But let me then zoom forward and kind of wrap this without repeating too much more of the basics in the memo. Again, the property is 137 acres, has very significant water rights in the home supply ditch. The home supply ditch is perhaps second only to the salvation ditch in terms of the important ditches in the valley that come off of the Roaring Fork. The head gate of that ditch is in Pitkin County, and it's above the confluence of the frying pan that makes it particularly significant for us to watch in terms of trying to protect the river health as well as ensure the continuing production on all these lands. And at first reading, there were just a few questions that mainly went to the nature of the relationship with Eagle County on this. Eagle County has a fairly young open space program and a handsome young open space director, but they are scrambling to get caught up with our 23-odd years of success in acquiring lands over here. Toby has done very impressive work on acquiring riverfront lands on the Colorado River and the Eagle County River, and it's a different time. I'd love to have them back to share with you what they've been able to accomplish. As we discussed, we are proposing a 50-50 partnership on this purchase at $5.9 million. The Eagle County Commissioners agreed to this at their meeting last week, and the questions from you all at first reading were, well, can we get clarification that the proceeds from this GOCO grant, if successful, would be split equally? That was always the intention. It's now in black and white in an IGA that Toby and I have worked out. Secondly, there was a request that we agree, whereas we would be responsible for the maintenance of this on the Pitkin County side, we would also kind of be the sole beneficiaries of any kind of profits or revenue that we can realize from our management of the property through either agricultural or residential leases. There are a couple of residences on the property, one house and maybe 2 trailers. We're still in the kind of the discovery phase on exactly what all the structures are down in that homestead area. So we've got those things clarified, and I'm happy to answer questions, and I'd also like an opportunity for Toby as well as the Open Space Board trustees. I don't want to forget that we do have letters supporting this purchase from several Pitkin County residents in the packet. Bill Fales, former chair and long-term member of the Open Space and Trails Board, as well as Tom Clark, Ed Vardy, who operates the educational facility at Cozy Point, and over the period that's elapsed since this packet was put in, we've also received letters from ACES, from the Roaring Fork Conservancy. Martha Cochran is finishing one that she has stated she wants to provide from the Aspen Valley Land Trust, and importantly from the town of Basalt. So there we go. This is one of those wonderful projects that seems to attract support from many, many directions. We haven't seen anything like this since we got to work on the mountain park, and I'm really happy to bring it forward.
Great, thank you. Perhaps before we go to questions for Dale, let's hear from Toby. Thank you for coming on over. And then there may be some general questions that both of you could answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here and appreciate the invitation. As Dale mentioned, our county commissioners voted unanimously last week to support moving forward with the acquisition. Prior to that, we'd similarly received a unanimous vote from our Open Space Advisory Committee as well. So I think this project really scored high on every mark, similar to what the Pitkin Open Space Group has recommended. It's partly a strong project that stands on its own merits. It's also, frankly, the strength of the partnership. We see this as kind of part 2. Salt and Stall, Red Ridge Ranch was part 1. This is part 2. We're going through a strategic planning process right now where our advisory committee said we like projects that are part of a system of open space, rather than just being reactive and responsive and acquiring pieces of land willy-nilly around the county. We like these really bold strategic efforts, such as what we've contemplated here. So strong partnership, strong support from Eagle County. We're also at a point in time where I think the first time I came and looked at Salt and Stall, I was about a week into my job. I was still looking for the coffee pot at Eagle County, but Dale had called me over to come look and talk about this vision. At that particular time, we had a very large open space fund balance. In the absence of an open space director, they hadn't closed deals for many years, and also partly as a matter of strategic sort of decision-making, it was to hold on to the money, let the real estate market change, shall we say.
Settle out.
Yeah, settle down, and then go about the business of acquiring key pieces of land. We're at a very different point in time now. We've closed 10 major projects in the last 2 years. Number 11 is cleared to land, and we expect to close in December. This is really number 12. This is the last big open space piece we're probably going to have for a while. In fact, I'm actually going to have to borrow from the general fund to make sure that it happens if we expect a January closing. I've done that before with a number of other projects. This is the first time I've had to do it because I quite simply don't have the cash. So we've really made good on our promise to acquire and close out a lot of those projects that have been lingering for years. This is number 12. As I said, our board feels strongly that it meets all of our criteria. We love the partnership with Pitkin and would like to see it come to pass.
Great. Thank you, Toby. Questions? Rob?
More of just a comment than a question. Toby, we're delighted to have your partnership in this, and I think it's a good property that meets a tremendous amount of goals that we have. I would be remiss if I didn't say the comments that come to me walking down the street from time to time, or the phone call here and there, of people saying, why are we spending money in Eagle County? And I think it's the strength of the partnership that is part of the reason why we're spending some money in Eagle County. Obviously, we have a relationship, and our wildlife crosses borders, our water crosses borders, and our citizens cross borders. But I would like to, state something on the basis of the strength of that partnership. You had part 1 and part 2 here. Let's try to look on part 3 in terms of reciprocating into our valley. We just built a recreational center in one of our open spaces and spent money right next to BOCC in this area. I'm not sure if we got any funding from Eagle County on that, and a great deal of Eagle County citizens are going to be utilizing that recreational center near the high school. But there's going to be other opportunities on our side of the border where we're going to continually ask, or I'm going to continually ask as a county commissioner, because I'm being told to by the citizens of our community, why isn't Eagle County participating more here? And I understand you've got limited funds, as we do as well, for the types of things that we want to do, but I think it needs to be said in this environment that we not only appreciate your support in projects like this, but we'd like to see some continued support on the part 3 phase, which is going to be additional properties that come in down in this area as we start picking out what is available. And we will be making the ask, and we will be trying to balance that ratio of spending this county to that county, and on this side of the border and on that side of the border, and hope that you'll fight that battle for us with the Board of County Commissioners over there at Eagle, as well as the town of BOCC and various other jurisdictions within your side of the border. So thank you.
I appreciate that.
Steve, did you have a hand up?
Yeah. There has been a little bit of concern expressed by people about the river access and how we need to approach that very gingerly, really, and I would urge you, Dale, to not make any promises or anything until the management plan is fully in place, because it isn't that long of a stretch of riverbank that's there, and it might not be at all an appropriate place for public access. That will come during the study, I'm sure, but looking at the map of the big picture of the whole Emma area is the best thing that you could do to let people know why, even though this is in Eagle County, why we are interested in this piece of land, because it showed it all the way through the whole Emma area, both in all the way Picken County, Eagle County, Rock Bottom Ranch going into Garfield County, how there are pieces of open space land that have been acquired and conservation easements that have been donated and purchased, and it's really impressive how much land there is now protected, and with the addition of this is like a key piece of that, right in the middle of the whole mix of things. Congratulate you on, it's a long effort and a lot of effort by a lot of people, but
thank you.
All you have to do is look at that map and you can see why the glacier property is so important.
Other questions, Michael?
Dale, you said it has recreational values, agricultural values, water rights, riparian, but for me, the one value it doesn't have is not in Picken County, which just seems to me an overriding value. And it seems to me that if you're going to spend money outside of Picken County, you have to look to your essential self-interest and how that's fulfilled for the residents of Picken County. And I supported the Saltonstall acquisition because it had a trail access to Picken County. Essentially, it was like buying a front door for Picken County. This, on the other hand, you can't argue with all the values that you said it has, but it doesn't. I don't think it's in the essential self-interest of Picken County, and the idea that somehow I guess we have relationships with Eagle County. We have those things, but we also have great differences, and all you have to do is look across the river there and see what those great differences are. Those great differences are a completely different approach to zoning, to land use, and that goes also for Garfield County. Those are the things that actually separate us in a fundamental way, and we've tried to reconcile that, but we really haven't been able to. So yeah, we share some values, but we're also separated by some values. And really what I told you I opposed this last time we had a hearing, but really what crystallized my opposition to this was the hearing that we had right after we had a hearing with you, and that was the access for a new driveway to the Mandalay property. And that was a great concern to all of you, that somehow we had missed on the conservation of the heart of elk production in Picken County. We just hadn't even talked about it. And yet there were 12 or 13 35-acre plots that are not under conservation, that desperately need to be under conservation. And so for me, it's just having lost sight of really fundamental self-interest of Picken County. This, I don't think, meets that much higher standard than having these attributes. We have those attributes in Picken County, and the plot of land that we were looking at and agonizing over a driveway access has something really fundamental to Picken County, which Picken County does well, and I don't mean as an organization, but as a natural landscape, is the production of these elk and the preservation of these elk. And it's, I look on it as that we should make that a priority. And so $3 million, or almost $3 million, for a piece of property outside of Picken County, there are arguments both ways, but quite frankly, my heart is in Picken County, and I'd rather keep my money there also. So.
Thank you, Michael. Actually, my heart is in Emma. And coincidentally, the Emma Road is split. One side of the road is Picken County, and my neighbors on the other side of the road is Eagle County. But we all share the same values. And this is certainly not precedent setting. As Dale has said, Eagle County came to the table way back when for the Emma open space. I'm not sure how that ever happened, but I was actually surprised to hear that. Eagle County came together for the Grange property, albeit some of the Grange property extends on the other side of the highway into Eagle County, but the bulk of it is in Pickett County. The Grace Sheehyde Meadows project, Town of Basalt contributed to that, as well as the historic town site of Emma. So we have great partnerships. And in addition, in terms of going outside of Pickett County, we have approved, and past boards have approved, conservation easements on the Darien Ranch in Gunnison County. Jerome Park, certainly a treasure, but a third of that property is in Garfield County. You've got Coal Mountain Ranch, Bill Fayle's ranch, Garfield County, Pickett County. John Lislandic's ranch, Garfield County. Crystal River Bike Trail, Garfield County. But we all share a vision, and we've talked about this before. And even though some of our partners don't have the same land use codes and perhaps the same priorities, it doesn't mean that we should disavow what our goals are and our visions are for the valley. And for us to be able to participate and actually to encourage Eagle County to come over on this side of the valley and spend some of their dollars, where I'm sure they've got other great projects on the main part of Eagle County to utilize those dollars, I think they should be recognized and thanked for. This property is contiguous, it's adjacent to other open space parcels that we have. It certainly is adjacent to Pickett County, Emmett Farms, which is part of that property is in Pickett County. So for me, it's not a question of whether we agree or not agree with other counties' land use codes and how we use our money, but what makes sense for the greater citizens of Pickett County, as well as the Roaring Fork Valley, which I think we all hold dear and have common goals and share a common vision, that whatever we can do to make it better for all of us, whether we live in Pickett County or work in Pickett County, and many of our employees and employers actually live in Garfield County and in Eagle County. They have their homes there. They may work in Pickett County, but this is a resource that everyone will be able to enjoy. So whether you live or work in Pickett County, it's something that we can all benefit from. So I'm going to support this, and I want to thank you. Rachel?
Thank you. That was very well said. And I also will be supporting this. It's been said before, but when people are driving on Highway 82, they don't really recognize, oh, I've just crossed this county line, or I've just left this county. You kind of weave your way in and out of those counties before you get back up to Pickett County on 133. And I see this as the entryway to Pickett County on Highway 82 for a lot of folks. And I see it as protecting our entryway and protecting the shift in the land use patterns that may occur. The precedent isn't just with Pickett exceeding its limits. It certainly goes back to Aspen being the original purchaser of North Star. They originally bought the golf course outside of the city limits and saved that from preservation, and even the Cozy Point Ranch. And you know, they were making that move thinking that Cozy Point was very much the entryway to Aspen, and how people visualized that they were arriving in Aspen and the scenic corridors there. I can't even remember the name of the other parcel that surrounded the Sandetine Ranch that goes down to Woody Creek Road, but that was originally purchased by the city of Aspen and then jointly shared in with our open space funds to settle that out. But you know, it's been about trying to protect landscape scale acquisitions. And I know when the Forest Service says that they're talking about 10,000 acres, we're talking about 250 or 300 at a time. But when we look at the entire map of preservation in that area, it really starts to get onto a landscape scale preservation. You know, the Mandalay driveway issue is an important issue, no question about that. but that property is not on the market, and it's something we should be prepared for and look at. But unless we're starting to talk about condemnation to preserve things that may or may not be under a threat of development, I see it as non sequitur. And this property is on the market, and it is a potential to be subdivided and sold off. So, you know, I just don't see those two as having a real relationship with each other. I look at projects that we're supporting, like, just in support, not financially at this time or anything like that, but the continuing care retirement community moving to BOCC, and that BOCC is a good home for our seniors in our retirement community, while contributing to projects that continue to enhance the quality of life surrounding BOCC makes sense to me. We're certainly considering participating in other affordable housing projects in BOCC, which is half in Eagle County and half in Pickens County. And we have purchased units in BOCC already for our housing program. And I think that just speaks to the regional nature of our efforts and our community needs and our valley and how it functions as a whole. It doesn't function because we have a Berlin gate up at Highway 82, and are you from Pickens County? Are you from East Pickens County? West Pickens County? It's all Pickens County. It's all the Roaring Fork Valley. And I also think it's very similar to the discussion we've been having with the City of Aspen about funding Health and Human Services. And instead of them saying, yes, but the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center is in silt, and yes, we have a bear problem, but the center is in silt, or that the youth zone for youth diversion out of the criminal justice system, well, the heck, they're centered in Glenwood Springs. Why should we give it to that? We're connected. We work regionally on any number of these issues that come before us. So I'm delighted and very grateful for the support of Eagle County and the work of our Open Space and Trails Board and the property owners as well, as reaching terms with us on a good price, and got my fingers crossed on the GOCO grant. So I'm happy to move this forward.
This is a public hearing. I'm going to open this up to the public now. Anybody wishing to make any comments, just please identify yourself. Tim?
George, I'm Tim McFlynn, and I'm a trustee of the Open Space Program. And I lived in Emma when I moved here 25 years ago. And I can't add anything to the quality. As I sat here and listened to the 5 sets of comments, I don't want to repeat any of them. I want to just tip my hat to the staff, Toby as well as to Dale. These things take years. These visions take decades. Emma has been a landscape that has played out over decades now, like the Crystal River, Hunter, Smuggler, etc. And to all of you and the prior boards for having the vision that this would change the landscape of the whole county. And it's beginning to do that. I think the map, the bigger map, when we saw it at our meeting and when I just saw it again, is kind of amazing, because I used to live down there where there wasn't 1 square foot of conserved property. And so I hope you'll support it. On the issue of crossing county boundaries, my only footnote, because Ty Jacober, our chair, who can't be here today, said something in our meeting that resonated with me that I'll share, which was, when you acquire Saltonstall and Glacier, which is the cornerstone of that whole, what Dale calls the Fertile Crescent, because of the depth and quality of the soil, the amount of senior water rights, the sun, etc. In fee, when you acquire it and you own it, it becomes Pickens County. The control you can exercise in perpetuity over how it's used, what the water is used for, what's grown on the land, is quite different than if it's an easement. And I think it's very exciting that your board has approved doing some fee acquisitions like Saltonstall and hopefully Glacier. That's what Boulder figured out many, many, many years ago they needed to start doing, and we're now starting that. So thanks for listening.
Thank you. Howard?
Again, I think everybody's comments here are spot on. I think, Rob, your comments about expecting participation in the future working at Pickens County on shared resources, I think is a key expectation. So I'll twist that a little bit, and to kind of respond to Michael's comments. The future is across the river. It's in Willett. And we've seen what neglected land planning can allow to happen in the future. And we on the Open Space Board feel that it's critical to take advantage of an opportunity to conserve this land, really not for today, but for the next 100 years. The glaciers were here 120 years ago, farming the land, and really it remained that way for maybe 60 years. And then the whole economic development that's created up here in Aspen, the power of this economic engine has created all these pressures in the valley. So I think there's a certain sort of moral obligation to expand our desires, not only accomplish our mission within the county, but in those areas that are impacted by our development up here. It doesn't mean we'll be successful in all cases. So we as a board are unanimous supporting the acquisition. We think this will be foreseen by those that come after us. That was a smart idea. 2050 people are going to say this was the right thing to have done. I don't know how they did it, but this made sense. And the details will be lost, but the property will be there. So I encourage you to vote for it. I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to make any public comments? So at this time, I'll close the public comments and bring it back to the board.
Do you accept a motion, George, for
Yes.
further discussion? I move to approve an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, authorizing acquisition of the Glacier Ranch and intergovernmental agreement providing for joint funding with Eagle County.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion? Michael?
I've just got to say that on a personal basis, that I feel like I'm astride two horses, and one horse is facing in one direction and the other horse is facing the other direction, because, I mean, you look at what the commissioners have done. They've acquiesced to the conversion of public lands in Pickens County to private holding. Almost 2 square miles. So they've taken public lands in Pickens County and written a letter supporting the acquisition of those public lands to a private individual. And now they're proposing to take private land in another county and make it, as I've heard here, part of Pickens County. I mean, that's a position I have a hard time riding both horses or going in the same direction. For me, it's contradictory. So it's I find it inconsistent and hard to rationalize and hard to find the logic that supports that. So for me to come back and say, well, listen, we need to protect our lands in Pickens County. We need to use those funds that we have in Pickens County. And once I think if for instance if Eagle County spent $3 million in Pickens County, I could see a reciprocation based on that, but I haven't seen those counties acting in those kind of ways. So that's my difficulty. And when both those horses take off, I'm left on the ground. So.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you, Toby, for coming over. Thank you, everyone. We'll do one more quick item, and then we'll take a break. This is a land use consent public hearing item. Louis Caparella, activity envelope, site plan, scenic review, and request for exempt agricultural floor area has been continued to August 28th for noticing. We need a motion to accept that.
A motion for that continuance to August 28th.
Second, and you'll see if no one's here to comment on
Yeah,
it.
this is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, let's take a 15-minute break.
That's good.
2:15, we'll be back. Land use public hearing, we have to backtrack for a second part of IGA that we missed. And John, you want to introduce this?
Sure. What I would like to do, the board to consider is a motion to reconsider the previous item, the approval of an ordinance authorizing the contract and IGA concerning the acquisition of the Glacier Ranch property. Particular, the ordinance just approved by the board has within its operative language in paragraph 6 a reservation that is consistent with the Pitkin County Charter, which allows for the reconveyance of a portion of the ranch property. And that portion of the ranch property being the property that is already developed with the ancestral homestead, I guess I would describe it, the part of the property that is north of the road and south of the river. What we'd like to do is add within that paragraph, consistent with the Home Rule Charter, an ability to convey a portion of the pertinent water rights to the property. The recommendation for that was made by the Open Space and Trails Board and was unanimously approved, I believe, at their meeting last week on Thursday, and so as a consequence didn't make it into the packet that was generated and had this particular language in the ordinance. The inclusion of this paragraph 6 basically allows the county to reconvey two particular associated rights that the county will acquire with the Glacier property. The potential reconveyance of those rights is provided for and will be consistent with the previously approved conservation easement and IGA with Eagle County. The only impediment to doing so would be our own charter requirements in the expenditure of Open Space and Trails funds. By inclusion of that additional language in paragraph 6, we would have the flexibility to convey not only that portion of the property with the existing improvements, residential improvements on the property, but also a portion of the water rights. The issue of water rights came up in a broader context of discussion with water management and administration within the Roaring Fork Valley as a whole, and recognition that although legal avenues are not fully developed at the present time, a hope that they will be in the future that would allow for a continuation of agricultural use on this property, but a savings of water that's actually applied on the land, with the remainder of that water more than likely being attributed to in-stream flows in the Roaring Fork River. Without the inclusion of this language, such a possibility would not exist as a consequence of a strict adherence to the county's Home Rule Charter. So, would ask the board to consider a motion to reconsider the, let's see here, I just need the ordinance authorizing the acquisition of the Glacier Ranch and intergovernmental agreement providing for joint funding with Eagle County for the purpose of modifying paragraph 6 of the ordinance to include within that paragraph 6, after the phrase subject to the reservation of public access easement, as well as the addition of this language, as well as a proportion of the pertinent water rights, comma, and then the remainder of the paragraph would read as is, provided such reconveyance is also consistent with agreement with the county and Eagle County, GOCO, or any other funding partner as provided in the Home Rule Charter. That's it.
Okay, questions?
I would make that motion for discussion's sake.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay. Questions? Steve?
I would like to see a written, printed version of that wording, just to,
You probably won't be able to read that, Steve, but that's all I can do at best.
which part is
George, can I ask about?
Okay.
Yes.
There's two number 6s, that's where I was confused. So it's the second number 6.
There are? Well, there's the first one's a recital. Oh, this is not a recital, this is in the operative, I'm sorry, I mentioned this was the operative language of the ordinance itself.
Rachel, while Steve is reading.
Yeah, it would be my understanding that after master planning the process and the community input, any potential decision to sell portion of this would be coming back to our board and to the Eagle County Board for their input on that master plan, that decision, and the Open Space and Trails Board, and that any proceeds then would be divided 50-50, given that we have put into the purchase and acquisition and closing costs 50-50. Would that be?
You're absolutely correct as far as any kind of reconveyance coming back to the BOCC of both counties. The apportionment might be altered a little bit, primarily just because GOCO would enter into the situation.
Right,
and their funding might have the requirement that the allocation be divided up otherwise. To be honest, we have included this type of language in other open space acquisitions, never exercised it.
Right.
We tend to try to look well into the future, to try to envision some scenario where the most advisable course of conduct would actually be to dispose of some portion of the open space asset acquired with our restricted open space funds. It is a difficult prognostication, and I can't imagine it happening very often. And as I said, it's never happened. With all the times we've included that language after the voters have authorized the inclusion of such language. In this particular instance, for this particular property, it may actually come to fruition in regards to these water rights, simply because as state water law develops and changes, and I would assume that development and change would occur over years, actually, not something that's in the immediate offing, but would allow agricultural activity as is contemplated by all of the partners in the acquisition of this property to continue, while at the same time conserving some amount of the water that is actually applied to the property now. And in so conserving the use of the water associated with the property, we would, as partners, have an ability to do something else with that water. And it would be consistent with the conservation easement, with the IGA, and now with the ordinance to use that saved water, if you will, that conserved water, in a manner that is consistent with overall conservation objectives. And obviously, the first thought comes to in-stream flow protection. But into the far future, the conservation goals and objectives of the partners might change and might incorporate some other endeavor as well.
Okay. Now, I just realized this created flexibility, and I wanted to ask the question that should there be any sort of sale of the homestead area that would effectively reduce the purchase price, that reduction would be shared among the parties, including GOCO, Eagle County, and ourselves.
Right.
Michael? So, Dale, why is it contemplated to reserve this piece of land to possible sale?
The only other time we've done this is with the 1 acre area surrounding the buildings at Emma. And we did it in that case because Pitkin County is still uncertain as to what the best programming is for those structures. The idea regarding the property is similar here, that that 9 acre area down by the river is primarily occupied by the old homestead with a fringe of riparian habitat around it. And so the notion is that if Pitkin County determines that the ownership of those structures is no longer serving open space objectives, that it have some flexibility to find someone else to own them, with the reservation of a conservation easement on that property that would ensure continuing public access to it. So that was the idea regarding the 9 acres.
So do the structures on that 9 acres cover the entire 9 acres?
No.
So how much of them, it is?
Well,
Why not just reserve the land where the structures are?
And that's a fair point, but we were trying to get to the same outcome by saying that we would do it subject to the reservation of a conservation easement only, so that we could protect the area outside the developed portion of the property. But what you're proposing is exactly the way we were thinking. So you could achieve that by saying that the county may reconvey some or all of those and make that additional change as well. We did something similar at the Emma Town site, where we have that flexibility to convey up to a certain size area surrounding the buildings in Emma.
John, thank you, Dale. In the homestake ditch, how's that governed? Do the property owners own rights, or do they own shares in a ditch company?
Both.
Both. And how do they do that?
Well, in some instances, property owners directly own the water that they are applying to their land, and in other instances, the ditch company owns water rights, and then the property owners own a share interest in the ditch company, which then allows them the ability to apply water that the ditch company diverts and owns to their land.
And in the case of this property, what's the nature of...
This property is shares in the ditch company.
Shares in the ditch company. So how would then those shares be converted to some sort of in-stream use?
Any number of different avenues which are not available now.
Not available because of state law or because of the governance of the ditch company?
Both.
Both.
Steve?
Should that paragraph maybe be reworded to say, may reconvey all or part of those lands? Would that give the option then of selling part of the 9 acres but not the whole 9 acres?
By reserving the ability to convey those lands, it does not require us, if a decision is made, to convey a portion, to an inability to convey a portion. We just are reserving the ability for the entire segment that is essentially north of the road. We can include that language, but operatively, I don't think it makes a difference.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we had a motion, we had a second. Rachel, you have your hand
I
up.
just want to confirm, is the motion with the original language you read then complete, or did you have any other?
No, that is it.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Since I opposed the original, I'm going to oppose this.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're going on to our land use public hearings. And the first is the GSS property site plan review for driveway. This was continued from July 10th. And Lance?
Yeah, really, this was continued from July 10th. If you'll recall, the applicant was given direction to do some more research, and they have done that, and Jim Curtis would just like to report to you the latest findings.
And I also thought I read that staff was going to recommend that we continue this as well, but we'll have that discussion.
We'll have that discussion.
Yes, okay, thank you. Jim, just introduce yourself, please.
Jim Curtis, representing the applicant. And as Lance said, I would just like to give you a 5-minute update. And really, the update is coming from the Wanda Basil memo that was submitted at the July 10th meeting. And this information was supplied by Ms. Reckling and Mr. Wagner, and we very much appreciate that and thank them for that. Now they can get up and blush, I told them. But basically, the attorney for GSS, Fred Pierce, has had a chance to review this information, and Fred has also done his additional research working with Stewart Title Company. And based on that information, it's Fred's opinion that the GSS property does have legal easement access through the Holloway property. Basically, the history of the deeds and the history of the chain of title is a little bit confusing, but based on Mr. Wagner's knowledge of the area and the properties in the 1950s, the 1960s, and 1970s, his information proved to be invaluable in helping us look at the deeds, chain of title, some idiosyncrasies in various historic documents. With that being said, once again, Fred feels we do have legal access through the Holloway property. Fred Pierce and I met with the Holloway family on August the 1st, and we shared our information with them in a very friendly, cordial manner. And we said we would like the Stranahan family to work hand in hand with the Holloway family to see if there's a possible win-win situation in terms of access through the Holloway property. Monday of this week, I followed up with Roy Holloway, who's kind of been my point of contact. At this point in time, the Holloway family has retained an attorney on their behalf to review the information, and Fred Pierce and I are sharing any information we have with them. This is a very cordial relationship at this point in time. So, and then Mr. Holloway, Roy Holloway, and I said we would just stay in touch. So at this point in time, I would probably like to see if I could get a tabling for a month and come back to you with what the Holloways communicate back to us or back to myself. And then the second thing is, and just as informational, after the July 10th meeting, Mr. Wagner and I spoke, and Mr. Wagner asked if I would ask the Stranahan family to see if they would give a price to sell the property as is, and the Stranahan family is considering that. They haven't given me authorization to give Mr. Wagner a price as of today, but they are considering that, and once I have authorization and a number, I will be happy to communicate that to you, Mr. Wagner. So, in summary, I would like to see if we could table for a month, and that's so the Holloway family and the Stranahan family can continue their discussions and see if there's a way this situation can be a win-win situation for both parties. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Jim? Michael?
I'd like to ask for an executive session with our attorney for some advice.
Okay.
That would be for purposes of discussing this application pursuant to CRS 24-6-4024B.
So that's a motion.
It's a proposal, yeah, for a motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
So we'll just adjourn next door. You guys can stay here. Okay, I would accept a motion to go out of exec session.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, Curtis, you had a question?
Yes, really for my personal education, could there be a little bit more information on, I was always of the opinion, or I've been told executive session was based on personnel matters, pending litigation or potential acquisition. Is it more broad-based than that?
Statutorily it is, yes. And the statutory site that the board used to go into executive session provides for essentially the ability for a client, in this case the board, to confer with counsel, myself, in a confidential manner.
Thank you.
Okay, so, let's see, this is a public hearing. Anybody wish to make any comments on this at this time? Seeing none, we'll close that public hearing, bring it back to the board.
Do we have a date potential for the motion to continue?
I haven't talked to Jim, but September 25th would be,
A little more than a month,
you know,
but
a little more than a month.
Either September 11th or September 25th.
Either one works for me.
do we know how stacked some of the other future agendas are? Lance?
I don't have that.
I seem to think that 25th was pretty lean, but,
I could find that in a second.
and the 11th is less than a month, so.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking the
And you
25th.
won't have the land use on there, George?
They won't, yeah, it's,
The 25th would probably be appropriate, if that's all right with you. Can you put it in town?
I'll get back to you, but
yeah, 25th.
I can edit it.
Yes, Jim?
Either, the 11th might be a little bit better, because what I would envision is if the Holloway family communicates back to me that, yes, they agree that there is a legal access, and yes, they agree there's some form to do a win-win situation, I would not envision bringing revised plans and things back at the next meeting. It would just basically be a 5-minute update saying, we're going to either end up in court or we're going to end up working together.
Okay, so September 11th would work for you?
Yes. So my birthday.
That would be a win-win for us.
Bring all the cookies you want.
Yes. Yes.
Jim, the continuance from the county's point of view would not be just for the purposes of allowing further dialogue between the parties, Always and the Stranahan family, but also for the county to deal with an application that's still in front of us. If you, as a representative of the applicant, withdraw the application, then quite frankly, that's the end of it. But otherwise, we still have to deal with an application that's out there.
I understand that. Thank you.
Okay, I would make a motion to continue the GSS property site plan review for driveway until September 11th.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Great, thank you all for attending.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda is the Land Use Code Amendment, Partial Accessibility. This is our second reading, and Joanne Schaffner is going to present.
Okay, so I'm Joanna Schaffner. I'm the zoning officer for Picken County, and I work in the Community Development Department. And I'm here for second reading for a code amendment which seeks to grant relief from floor area and growth management limitations in zone districts where floor area is determined by ratio. At the last meeting, the board asked for some examples of how this might be applied, and I tried to provide some scenarios. I don't know if I hit my mark there or not. And then I also provided the allowances which were granted last year, the previously approved allowances. And basically the difference between this amendment and the last amendment that we did is that this amendment seeks to only modify a portion of the house. Not all aspects of the house become compliant with the ANSI codes. And as Merrill had pointed out at our last meeting, the ANSI code, it's not a big, thick code, but we're only looking at 2 sections or 2 chapters out of that code, so it's very limited scope that we have. And I'm here for questions.
Thank you. Questions? Michael?
If a subsequent owner comes in, and can they can they take apart the accessible aspects of it and still claim the space?
Now, houses that are approved with this allowance will have a covenant agreement that is recorded in the clerk and recorder's office, and that agreement requires that the home stay modified or stay in the condition that it was approved. And if it gets modified where those items are removed, or a new owner buys it and doesn't want any of it, then we specifically have a clause that says the house will not be recognized as non-conforming for floor area, so you couldn't tear the house down and then bring back all that floor area in a way that where it wasn't accessible. So you are limited. The covenant requires that it remain as approved. And then if those, like I said, if those allowances, or if those accommodations are removed, then the floor area has to be reduced as well.
Other questions? This is a public hearing. Anybody wish to make any comment on this? Seeing none, we'll keep the public hearing open, so we don't have to do this for the last one. And,
I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, Colorado, amending Title 8 to the Pickens County Code, specifically the 2006 Land Use Code.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, Joanne, for your work on this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Good scenarios.
Did the scenarios help?
The scenarios help.
Okay, so Joanna and I weren't sure how to convey it.
No, it was very helpful.
Okay, last land use public hearing is the Gregory expansion of this is a great title, I like this. This is a Gregory expansion of non-conforming structure with significant changes. Lance Clark will present this, and
come on up, please.
Save the good guys for last.
This is going to be difficult, but I'll try to show you a couple aerials of this area to let you know what specifically we're talking about, and it's very difficult. But the Gregory property is a small house on a very small lot, described as under the Castle Creek Bridge. And by under the Castle Creek Bridge, we mean this little, and I'll show another area which may be better, but this little shaded area right here, which is essentially directly under the Castle Creek Bridge, this being coming into town. This is all of the villas of Aspen. This is the city's public work site where the city has plows and trucks and a lot of storage. And this is a place where, frankly, I had not been in Pickens County until this application, and I'm not sure many of you have. It's sort of a unusual and forgotten area because it's not visible. But essentially, if you come down Power Plant Road, there is, just before you get down to the creek, a little driveway here called Harbor Lane that goes back into this area where there are 4 structures. The Gregory structure right here, and Kirk and Petra, the owners, are here with Graham Means, their representative. 2 other structures, and then a larger duplex there. And what is even more strange about it is that it's not in the city of Aspen, which is even more strange because these 2 structures here are, and this Gregory property and this other property are not. And we really have not been able to figure out that anomaly, but it is indeed, everything we have found indicates that to be the case, that this property and the other property are not within the city, should be within the city, of course, from our perspective, but it is not. And what is built there, and I'll show you this other
Lance, are they essentially then in holdings?
Yes. This makes it even more clear. Everything in gray is City of Aspen. This is the Gregory property, an island, and the property at the end of Harbor Lane, another island. Everything else is within the city, which makes no sense. And of course, the county has no zoning for anything like this, anything this small. It's a very, very small lot and a reasonably small house on a small lot. The zoning is R15, which is 15,000 square foot lot. The gross square footage of this lot is 5,600 square feet. So it's not even, that's what makes it non-conforming. This is a non-conforming structure because it's sitting on a non-conforming lot, and because also it's a floor area lot. And given how we figure floor area, we take deductions for areas that are underwater, areas that are have right-of-way easements, and after one does that, the practical lot area is 600 feet, which would, the lot area would be, existing floor area is 20, the allowed floor area would be 600 square feet only if you took all of those deductions that we take from lot size to lot area. One could build a 600 square foot house. This house appears to be about 2,200 square feet. Another thing that makes it a little bit of an anomaly is we tried to find a building permit for it, and this was built in 1968. We do a better job now than was done in 1968, but we think we found the building permit for this. But there's no address, no property ID number, nothing like that. It's just a concrete block house under the Castle Creek Bridge. That's how it's described. And we believe that this is the building permit for this house, and that the lot was created legally because it was created prior to subdivision in Pitkin County, and that the house was built with a building permit such as it is.
Was the first owner Billy Goat Grout?
It was built by, as I understand it, this Ms. Harbor, Betty Jean Harbor, who Harbor Lane is named after. And she may have constructed some of the other structures there also. They can speak to that, but clearly this house. But the situation is that the Gregorys are now wanting to do, it's a 1968 house. I was there. Looks like a 1968 house. It houses itself like a 1968 house, and it's in need of some upgrades. There are electrical issues, there are plumbing issues, there are water leakage issues that they would like to address. But while they're doing that, they would like to make some minor expansions. And it's the minor expansions to the non-conforming structure that brings it in front of you. What they would like to do is add about 60 feet to a dining room area, and in your package you have the floor plans that show where the additions are proposed, and Graham might want to do that also. And then also they want to add on a flat roof about a 200-some square foot addition to an existing very small master bedroom. So the total of the additions proposed are 300 feet, relatively small. But the reason that they capped it, and we suggested they cap it as 300 feet, is this house obviously is within the 100-foot setback from Castle Creek. But for existing structures, we have a provision in the code that you can do a one-time 300 square foot addition if it maintains a 50-foot setback. And these proposed additions do maintain that 50-foot setback. So for expansion of a non-conforming structure with significant changes, that is a public hearing in front of the Board of County Commissioners, and there are specific criteria for the board to consider. It's absolutely discretionary on the part of the board, but there are criteria that I outlined in my memo. The first being that the board finds that any impacts on the neighborhood and the county are tolerable. There really are no impacts on the neighborhood at all that can be seen. The structure is not visible from any place other than somebody on Harbor Lane. That means the other 3 residences, and those 3 have all written letters of support, which you have in your packet. Second criterion is the use of structure is generally consistent with adopted master plans for the area and adjacent land uses. Well, there's nothing specific that would, in any of our plans, that would speak to that, but the operable plan would be the Aspen Area Community Plan. This is clearly within the urban growth boundary. As I says, it really should be in the city of Aspen, where more dense and intense development is appropriate. And then I pointed out again that it does meet the code requirement for a 50-foot setback from the high water line of Castle Creek for any addition of up to 300 feet. And then building code standards, hardship, or improvements to function and appearance. The applicant demonstrates the purpose is to meet practical difficulties and hardships which arise from existing restrictions upon repair, alteration, or restoration, or improve the function and appearance of the use. And clearly, having done the site visit and talking with the Gregories and with Graham, this proposed improvement meets those criteria. If we did not allow some increase, it would be very difficult to, even though the house has been there with people since 1968, this is some minor improvements to make the function better and to help with the willingness to go forward with the other types of improvements for building code purposes that clearly are necessary. So we feel that the constrained location, the limited footprint, and the 3-story structure have created some very unusual situations that do constitute practical difficulties and hardships, and that a minor remodel and expansion can address those, and that this would be one of the cases where that section of the code was really written for. That's staff's recommendation, and we would recommend that this proposal be approved, and I have a brief resolution attached that we would recommend that the board approve.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Questions for Lance? Steve and Michael?
If this were part of Aspen, and I guess you could say that when people ask where you live, you could say you live near Aspen, but not in Aspen.
We often say that.
What would they be allowed to do if it were actually part of Aspen?
You know, they don't really have a zone district either. We have the R15 and the R6, which is a 6,000 square foot lot, which this would not even be conforming with that. So there's nothing in Pitkin County that we could apply to this that would make any sense. I'm not that familiar with the Aspen land use code to know exactly if there would be a zone and what they could do. We referred it to Aspen Planning, but didn't get any comments. So I can't really answer that, Steve.
Michael?
Does the staff have any speculation about how those properties were established within the city, or was it just a mapping era or?
Other than trying to get to the bottom of, is this really in the county? No, I have not done. How did they annex? I haven't talked to the city about annexation ordinances to see if there was an error and they meant to annex the whole thing and they just annexed those other 2 structures. I haven't.
It's not that unusual to see enclaves surrounding any municipality, and that's what these 2 properties are. They're enclaves. And for whatever reason, the pattern of annexation just did not include those particular properties.
Okay, Graham, you just want to introduce yourself and you want to make a presentation?
This is Kirk and Petra Gregory, owners of the house, and I'm Graham Means, an architect working with them.
And, we think Lance has done a good job of analyzing and describing this, but I would like to elaborate on a few things. The Gregories have been in Aspen for 35 years, and they've owned this home for 27 years. Kirk has taught at the high school for 30 years, I believe, and Petra's a retail sales manager, so they're both very invested in the community. Lance has given a description of the lot. It is very small. It's very steep. It's underneath the bridge. It's very non-visible. It's an anomaly, let's face it. But it's been a home to them for, like I say, 27 years. Some of the problems with the existing house, well, it's a concrete block house. Structurally, it is solid, usable structure. There are some problems with roofing, electrical, plumbing, and things like that they would like to fix up. But the floor plan of the house, it's about 1,900 plus square feet. It's on 3 floors, so each floor plate is quite small. A lot of that square footage is taken up with stairs, so that it's very difficult to make good usable spaces. Their dining area is about 40 square feet right now. That's a little bit bigger than a piece of plywood. They can't even really get their family of 4, never mind have guests over there. And because of the 3 floor plates and the small areas, it is difficult to make plans work, make the house work better. But we have worked with it, and we do think we've come up with some good solutions. So the proposal is to make some interior plan changes, and in order to make those work, we would like to push out the dining area another 62 square feet, and we would like to add on 238 square feet for a studio for Petra's jewelry making. And also, in any house, it's nice to have a family have room to get away from each other a little bit. So just to free up the floor plan a little bit.
You're talking to my wife.
You can break in any time you want here.
You think the steel door with the barricade bar is a little much?
Okay. And then, we'd like to address the code and construction issues. We agree with Lance that there are just very few impacts to this proposal. It's a very minor additions. The additions are on top of existing roofs, so there's no change to the footprint of the house. There's no regrading of the lot, no excavation required. The setbacks do not increase. There's no increase in use, and there's no floodplain issues. The owners are in a process of sort of trying to bring this anomaly lot into compliance with everything. The first step that they did, and it was a fairly lengthy legal step, they had to work with the villas. Part of their deck was actually on villas property, and it took them a while, but they worked with the villas of Aspen to come to an agreement to legalize that whole situation. And then we have gone through sort of an architectural analysis of, what can we do with this house to make it a good usable house in the inventory of Aspen houses. So we've done those 2 things, and now we're here to try to be able to follow up on those 2 things and complete this process. I don't see anybody here complaining. They have 3 of their neighbors, including the Aspen Villas, have written letters in support of this. The Villas call them very good neighbors and want to see this happen so that their relationship with the deck and everything can all be finalized. So we don't see anybody in opposition, and we don't feel there are any impacts, and we do have neighbors in support. One of the things in going through this application and responding to the criteria was that it should comply with the Aspen Area Community Plan. I just want to make a few quick quotes from that. A stable community that is invested in the present and future of the Aspen area. A reliable workforce. Opportunities for people to live in close proximity to where they work. A reduction in adverse transportation impacts, a healthy mix of people, including singles, families, and seniors. And I think approving this proposal would help them to create a viable housing situation in for the city of Aspen, whether it's in the county or city or whatever. And it isn't really, well, it's got code issues, some legal issues. We'd like to just clear all of that up and ask for these modest increases so that this can be a good house in the Aspen housing stock. As far as the annexation and everything, I live in Meadowood. We're surrounded by city. And, you know, those situations do exist. And we haven't carefully analyzed what we'd have to do if they were in the city. However, we've talked about it. The Gregories would prefer to remain in the county, but really we'd just be trading one set of problems for another. None of this would be except legal without going through reviews in the city either. And the city codes are more set up for kind of an urban environment. This is not an urban lot. And so while it is surrounded by city property, I think this lot clacks a lot more like a county lot than it does sort of an urban context lot. So anyway, we think Lance did a good job with this and is making a recommendation that we would also hope that you would follow through with.
Thanks, Graham. Questions for Graham?
There was some wording about your deal with the villas, but then I see you actually purchased 227 square feet from them so your deck isn't projecting into their property, is that correct?
The deck, we should have taken care of it right from the beginning. Our landlord was Tam Scott when we bought this place. And, you know, I should have said, Tam, let's get this straightened out. We didn't. And so, you know, we're pretty good at putting things off. And so a good portion of the deck was on the villas. So when we got our improvement survey, it actually was more advantageous to the villas than us, because he showed that that in addition to that swath, the one across maybe a third of the deck, that the geometry of the deck was also slightly off compared to the annexation survey that they did with the city of Aspen. So we have actually preferred the annexation survey. So we got with one of my ex-students, Sarah Oates, and she dealt with their lawyer, and it was the first time we'd ever hired a lawyer, so that was interesting. But they worked out a deal whereby they said, yes, we will quit claim. So we didn't actually purchase it, we'll quit claim that part of your deck. But in exchange for that, they were very concerned about a liability. So we have a 7-year license, and so we have 7 years to make that right. And we also have to move our stairs back about that much. I have to take down a little bike shed that I have and a little pathway that I've made down there with pavers. So I've already started ripping that out. And so that'll all come out, and then when we redo the deck, which is the original from 1968, so it's probably time, we'll move back the deck that much to make it right. And then they also didn't want to budge on, there's some retaining walls against there, there's some railroad ties, and then also a cinder block wall, and we're going to have to get a patch of concrete about this big that we're going to have to cut off and get rid of that cinder block, which, you know, it's kind of more of an inconvenience, and it makes that deck space a little bit smaller, but it's doable. And so we just got to the point where let's just do this, and you know, because like I said, we quit claimed the bulk of what we needed them to quit claim us.
So then the part of the land that was quit claimed to you is actually in the city of Aspen, and the rest of your property's in the county? Is that correct?
I'm not sure how that's going to work.
Just out of, just
yeah, I don't know. I think that because it was, the way the annexation plan was drawn, that part of the deck was also, was considered in the county. So my recollection of it is that that's not going to change. Okay. Because the annexation drawing made a little area for our deck, and we weren't in the county. So now they're quit claiming to us that property, and it will remain in the county.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so now they actually, I suppose, you know, and with adverse possession, I think we could have probably pushed a little bit more, but I suppose they owned a little bit of property that was in the county, even though they're in the city. So I think it's going to make it a lot more clear.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Gregory expansion of non-conforming structure with significant changes for 1 Harbor Lane.
Second.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wish to make any comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. Any further discussion?
Just for clarification, sometimes we're called 10 Harbor Lane too, so I'm not sure there was a change where, I don't know if that
It
matters.
used to be 1 Harbor Lane, they changed it to 10 Harbor Lane.
I don't know if that matters,
No.
but just, you could maybe put a parentheses, put 1 in
Also
parentheses.
known as,
AKA 10.
Yeah,
okay.
we don't care, but there was some change that happened.
You comfortable making that slight amendment, Michael, to your motion?
Yeah, to whatever Harbor Lane.
Okay, that's it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck.
Grant, you want
Thanks,
this?
Lance.
Signs
The
back?
prints back? Just to use
You might be able to use
No,
them.
you can probably recycle.
We can
them, I think.
recycle.
But thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Mike, are you interested in helping me out with this edition? Sounds like it's like big things going on.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Here's another bigger titles. Thank you.
You're resting a little.
Okay, we're on to open discussion.
Yeah, and the first item, George, is I've asked GR to come in, just give us an update on the major construction projects going on in and around the AABC.
Thank you. Thanks, John. I'm GR Fielding, the Pekin County engineer. As John said, I'll give you an update on several projects out near the ABC. The first one, we'll talk about the road and sidewalk and infrastructure update on the ABC roads themselves. As the last update we gave, Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District is one of the major utility projects that has to happen in front of us along the 200 road. They're still there. It looks like we still have about a month to go for them to complete all of their relocations that they need to do along the 200 road, meaning that it might push us out of our window for that small portion of the project. That being said, for the remainder of the ABC, we're actually doing fairly well schedule-wise. The storm sewer has been installed up to the car wash that's right next to the Conoco station there. We have some of the harder aspects of construction coming up with that stormwater pipe, just because we have to go across a very long driveway cut for the gas station, where we have to keep a pretty short work zone in order to keep their business having an access. And then we have to cross back across the 500 road or Baltic Avenue, the main road of the ABC, right in front of the light, which will be interesting. We've got about 4 lanes wide worth of space to work in, and we'll probably be taking 2 up at any given time to kind of hopscotch our way across the intersection. We sent out an update the other day. The contractor requested a noise ordinance variance to be able to work on Sunday, this week, and next week in order to hit that area when we have the least amount of traffic going in and out of the ABC, which is on Saturdays and Sundays. As long as they meet all the conditions of that variance this Sunday, then they'll be allowed to work next Sunday. So that's where we stand with most of that. We have built a lot of the structures for the stormwater quality ponds. The last of the concrete down there was poured this week, so we'll excavate out the rest of that ponds coming up. They were working on it this afternoon when I was out there. And that is putting us a lot closer to getting a lot of that work along the Stein parcel being able to get buttoned up in the next couple weeks. For the pedestrian box, actually, before I move on to the pedestrian undercrossing at 82, is there any questions about the ABC project itself?
Questions? Rachel?
After the storm drainage pipe project is completed, will then the sidewalk improvements go over top of that?
Yes.
And you still believe you'd be on schedule to finish that before the snow falls this
Yes.
fall? Thank you.
The actual, the curbing gutter and the widening, that stuff actually goes pretty fast. It's just, we want to get the downstream end of that buttoned up
Oh, sure.
before we start ripping and tearing everything else, so. For the pedestrian undercrossing, that contractor is still pretty far behind our initial schedule. We have made some progress on the project. They have, I think the last time I was here, I gave you guys an update that we poured the floor and the walls of the box, and we have the lid on it now. That concrete's gotten to strength where we can start backfilling up against that. We anticipate that to start happening here pretty soon. Once you start seeing that, basically the earth that we dug out will just get brought back up against that box, and that's the kind of the first big step into getting that side of the highway put back together. We're looking at lane shift. Right now we have the chicane going over to the ABC side. We will shift that over more than likely the week of the 26th. And we'll get some public notice out for that. We're going to take a couple ads out in the paper to let everybody know that the highway configuration is going to change. We're going to push the traffic over towards the airport side. Once all of that gets backfilled, we can pave over the box. Yes?
While you're on that, what's RAPTA going to do? Because right now it works for them to go into the side road there and the airport. So what are they going to do for down valley?
They're going to continue to do what they're doing now with their bus stops being on the ABC 100 road, which is the frontage road on that side, and Airport Road, which is the frontage road on the airport side. So those stops are going to remain. When the highway gets pushed over there, all 4 lanes of traffic will remain on the highway.
Okay, thanks.
We're also making some progress on the retaining walls. There's about 8 retaining walls on that project, and we have 3 of them under construction right now that are making some good progress on. So most of all the activity now is on the airport side of the highway. We do have a few things that just got started up last week on the ABC side, including the beginning of the BRT stop on that side. So
GR, the contractor is under penalty clauses. They're not concerned, or they're not seeing it necessary to start working on Saturdays, or?
they've been working the last several Saturdays, and I think they are starting to feel the heat from some of the disincentives that they have in that contract. That being said, I think that we have to have the highway back to a straight configuration over the winter. It's not going to work in any of the chicane type of things. Snow removal, we'd have to have a traffic control person out there pretty much continuously resetting up anything. So that's one of the big things that they're going to be working to get that portion done. We were anticipating that they'd have some punch list items, some revegetation type of things to do in the spring. I think that we're at the point where we're realizing that that list is going to be a bit longer. That being said, the box will be in the ground. It'll be usable, and the BRT stops will be open and they'll be usable through the winter. I just think that some of the fit and finish things will be need to be done in the spring.
So how are we doing on budget?
Budgetarily right now, we have only experienced one overage in one of our lines, and that's so far fitting within our contingency. So.
Question, Steve?
Will the BRT stations be open by the deadline when the whole BRT project was supposed to be completed?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Our contractor's pretty convinced that they'll be able to make their date for these stops for BRT is the day before Thanksgiving, I believe, that Wednesday, and they believe that they'll have a functioning stop by that date.
If if they don't get it done, is there a penalty from the federal government somehow on the BRT project?
Well, the way that it works is both the federal money and our money and all the state's money and all those kitties of money that are building what were 2 projects, they have certain milestones in their contract, and with those come what we call liquidated damages. And those liquidated damages, I think, are in the tune of $3,000+ a day if they don't make that milestone. And so if they don't have an operational BRT stop by that date, then every day afterwards they'll be dinged that amount. So they've got a pretty hefty financial disincentive, the way that it works with that contract, to get this done in time.
Other questions, GR? Okay, thanks for the update.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it. Appreciate your hard work.
Thanks, GR. Next time I want to talk about, and I'll ask for Steve's help on this, but there is a Mountain District meeting, I think, coming up on the 23rd in Frisco, and some of the items that are going to be discussed are the legislative issues that we submitted. And particularly, I'm just going to end this around, this is the write-up that we submitted for the senior property tax exemption. And Steve, I'm hoping you still have your copy because I only have enough for...
yeah, I have mine here.
Okay. There's really, I think, 2 questions that we just want to talk about before that meeting on the 23rd. First, Steve's gotten some feedback from CCI staff that we had laid out 2 potential solutions. A preferred solution was seeking a pretty fundamental change in how the senior property tax exemption is calculated, which would require a constitutional amendment. Not surprisingly, CCI has come back and said they don't think that's really going to be feasible, and they encouraged us to take that out, but that was the mechanism that most closely reflected the goals I think that we had laid out. The secondary approach that we had laid out, and in no great detail, so we need to do some more work on this, was a statutory fix to various sections of Colorado Revised Statute to at least address the issue that was also brought up by the board of property owners being able to have some income, for example, rental income off of their primary residence and still claim the property tax exemption for military service or senior property tax exemption. We had thrown that out as a secondary possibility without a lot of detail behind it. I think what we wanted to get some feedback on is CCI is really encouraging us to, I think, pursue more of the revision of the Colorado Revised Statute. They think we can get some traction on the idea of getting a revision to Colorado Revised Statute to at least allow some secondary income or rental income, which was one of the specific issues that you had raised, off of a primary residence. And also had suggested a strategy of seeking sponsors for that during the joint committee meetings that are happening right now with the House and Senate, where they get to choose, I think it's 8 bill titles that each representative gets to choose, so they're working through those issues.
8 that committee could present.
Individual representatives says 5.
5, okay, so the committee has 8, I'm sorry. So that's the secondary question, is whether we also want to pursue discussions through that committee. So I think the first question is the board comfortable with us revising our statement to really focus on Colorado Revised Statute, move away from the bigger change that we had proposed that would require a constitutional amendment? And then the second question is really a tactical question about how we pursue that. Does that question make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't typically we would forward this on for CCI, for committees to start looking into this, and they'll provide some additional input and ideas. So how much in detail do we need to provide for CCI?
Essentially, at the October meeting will be a vote to say, should it be a CCI issue or not? And so the more you can smooth the groundwork and get agreement on taking it forward before then is good. The Western District meeting and all the other small district meetings, they'll be going over all the different proposals that came from all the different counties and trying to just generate that sort of dialogue, discussion, and things like that. See how much of that gets rolled into the final. When we had proposed this before, about 2-3 years ago, the large objection came up was from some counties that have much more aggressively pursued assisting their seniors get the property tax exemption and had really large numbers. I think it might have been Boulder County or something had 1,800, and people were concerned about the effect the change of allowing some income would have on the state's overall budget, and that it might grow to be too large. The economic downturn has kind of passed. Some of that pressure is off. I think we may have a small window, but I would advise keeping it to kind of the smaller ask as opposed to trying to make it 50% of the residential value, because I think that just lends to too easy arguments of saying, look, you're going to have someone with a $5 million home and they're going to want a tax exemption on $2.5 million of it, and what does that do to the state coffers? How big is that changing the dynamic of the state budget versus something that's a smaller change?
And especially given the real estate values everyone's familiar with Pickens County, to try to bring some of the smaller counties.
Yeah, it might be something that they'd just say, what, but the income, it seems reasonable to me, and I think that, it's really the classic of the simpler we can keep the ask and the simpler the explanation of what needs to be done, maybe bullet pointed a little more in the big paragraph or at the bottom.
I only had 2 sentences on the statutory, so it'll be a significant rewrite of our strategy, and that's, I think, part of what we wanted to just visit with you guys, because it's a change in strategy, and then
once you get it to a point where the CCI has accepted it and will make it a legislative, and they start to try to find a sponsor, you always have the potential sponsor input to changes or input that, that starts to happen through the legislative process. But I think it is good to get a toe in the door and to keep this issue in front of people.
Other thoughts, questions? Steve?
One point to keep in mind is the one revised statute is actually a deferral of the property tax, and it's not a complete exemption. And that's 3.5-1031. So that's senior and military tax deferral law. So they're not actually, eventually the tax does get paid retroactively. The other 2 clauses have to do with, well, the one we decided it doesn't even have the thing about the rental income, but so it's the just one of them, the work-off program, that is actually the tax exemption that applies here.
Well, and one of the things that's confusing is that it seems to be being implemented differently, that the income restriction is applied to the exemptions as well as the deferrals, and that is not what I'm reading, at least in the statute. So that's got to be a clarification we have with DOLA. We may be solving a problem that's not there, actually.
Also, John, I figured out the thing that Tom Isaac brought up had to do with downsizing. If seniors want to downsize into a smaller house, they're required to live for 10 years in their house. If they downsize into a smaller house, they might only be there for, less than 10 years very easily, and then they can't apply for the exemption. So that's the issue that Tom Isaac thought maybe we could.
Yeah, and I guess that would be, I believe that I've got to look. I think that may be into the constitutional issue also. So
Yeah, could
we'll double check that.
be. I have it listed as the 39-3-203 section, which would be revised statute. That 10-year requirement is mentioned there, but maybe it is in the Constitution also.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the bullet, I have some bullet points listed here under the Constitution that has that requirement, so we'll double check that.
Yeah, the more carefully you can turn the legislative issue form into a separate white paper that describes what the problem is, what we'd like to do, and ask for your support, and maybe list a few examples, the better, because people aren't going to be flipping back and forth to the statutes and, things like that. So I know we work within the form that they give us, but that doesn't mean that you can't supplement it with more of a 1 or 2 pager white paper of in practical effects and in layman's terms. This is kind of where we're trying to get to.
All right, I think that gives us the direction that we needed. 2 more items. One, just a quick reminder that due to the bike race next week, the courthouse building will be closed Tuesday, the 20th, from 8 until noon. There will still be folks working in the building. We will have signs up where people can dial the 920-5200 if they need to access county offices for business purposes. We will remain open all day Monday, even though access into town will be a challenge. And we will not have a meeting. We will not have our Tuesday work session on the 20th. And then the last item, just a quick update. As you're aware, there's a fire that started down in Garfield County. We have provided through the ambulance district mutual aid, and so we have some of our equipment and crews down there providing mutual aid. We authorized that yesterday. And then I've reached out to my counterpart just to offer assistance should they need it as they go through either the immediate response or recovery, and so we'll wait and see if they have any requests. They haven't made any at this point beyond the they did need paramedics. You have to have a paramedic while you're doing the fire lines and such for the firefighters, just there on site.
Any update?
I haven't gotten any today, no. No, I wish I could give you one, but I don't have one at this point.
Okay.
That's all I have for open discussion.
Board, any open discussion? John?
Rachel sent me an email before her trip regarding the CWCB's drought preparedness management plan by the state with an open inquiry as to whether or not to prepare comments. To be honest with you, it's a lengthy document. It's a planning document that reads similar to other emergency plan documents that are in place already, and the one that I'm aware of is the one dealing with wildfire. There aren't any specifics in it that I've seen in going through it, and so there aren't any particular comments that I would make. There's nothing in there to say upon the declaration of an emergency will increase diversions to the east or something along those lines. But it's a document that lays out a means of declaring an emergency, a statewide emergency, based upon drought and a system of coordinating state agencies and departments to meet that problem. So I don't personally see any avenue for putting in comments, but I wanted to inquire of the board, and particularly of you, Rachel, as to whether or not you wanted to explore that further.
No, I just really wanted your eyes on it to see if there was any opportunities that could strengthen non-consumptive issues during those times, but if it doesn't seem to put a clarion call out for fire hydrants over fish.
But in the event of a drought emergency, the actual steps that would be taken, which aren't particularly outlined in advance,
maybe
include anything.
Yeah. Okay. But thank you for looking into that, John.
Sure.
Anything else? Seeing none, I would accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, grassroots.